Safe Haven, Book 3 in the Carver Ranch romance series, and a Love at Juniper Ridge sweet romance novella by Heather Tullis. 1. A bomb burst nearby, churning dust into the air, and Beau turned, hearing the rat-a-tat-tat of a machine gun on his left. He lifted the sniper rifle to his shoulder and sighted down it to the group of people below. He could smell the dust and fear of Afghanistan, feel the pressure on his lungs as he searched the scope for his target, the tension rising with the screams around him. As he found the general, he smiled, adjusted to compensate for the breeze and distance, and pulled the trigger. When the general was hit by the bullet a couple of seconds later, he twisted and suddenly turned into Tosca. She landed flat on her back, eyes rolling back in her head as blood poured from several locations, despite the fact that she had been hit by a single bullet. Beau popped into a sitting position in bed and blinked in the darkness, his breathing heavy, his heart racing, and blood pounding. His hands were clenched and aching. "Honey, it was just a dream." Tosca's hand touched his upper arm, light and reassuring. "It's okay, it was just a dream." He blinked a few times, still hearing the screaming in his head, the dread and terror of having shot her. He turned and pulled her into his arms, needing the reassurance of her touch, the smell of her skin, the sound of her voice in his ear. Tosca happily obliged, holding him as well and speaking soothing words in her sweet southern drawl while he came back down to earth again. A part of him felt weak and foolish for needing her reassurance, but the other part of him was just glad to have her there. "Feeling better?" she asked after several minutes had passed. "You were yelling just before you woke up. It must have been bad." He had incorporated her into his combat dreams before, but he had never been the one to hurt her until now. Beau knew it wasn't real, that it was some twisted manifestation of his worry, but he couldn't help it. "It wasn't a picnic. Sorry for waking you. I know you have work today." He pulled back, pressing her strawberry blonde hair back from her face. It was short, almost a pixie cut, and in need of coloring again soon. "I seem to be making a habit of waking you up at night. Don't worry about it. I'm happy to wake up for you anytime." She reached over and turned on the bedside lamp. The light created odd shadows on her face, but clearly illuminated her worried expression. "You're having more trouble sleeping than you used to, aren't you?" That depended on how you looked at it. Yes, it was worse than when they were first married and moved to Montana under their pseudonyms, but not more than when he first returned to Colorado from serving in Afghanistan. "I've had worse. It'll be okay. I just need to work on some of those techniques the therapist taught me back home." He didn't mention that he was practicing them sometimes when he got time alone. They didn't seem to be helping. Beau kissed Tosca gently, then glanced at the clock. It was nearly 4, and he had to be out and ready to start milking at 5 anyway. "I might as well get moving. You try to get some sleep. You've got a few hours before you need to get up." "You're sure?" She touched his cheek, her soft, small hands caressing his skin. "Of course, honey. I'll see you when you get off work. I love you." He made a point of using an endearment rather than the new name the feds had given her. He still thought of her as Tosca and probably always would, but he lived in fear of using the wrong name in front of the wrong person. "Love you too." She lay back in bed and reached over to turn off the lamp. Beau, now known as Adam Beckstead, slid out of bed and took his cell phone off the charger. He was no stranger to sleepless nights. They had been in Somerville, Montana, since leaving Colorado in late July. It was now mid-October, and the court case for Charles was coming up the following month. As the date for the case approached, Beau found himself growing more and more anxious, concerned about his wife's safety and the experience she would have when she got on the witness stand and had to testify about seeing the murder. He stepped into the little cottage's bathroom and turned the water on hot, then stripped from the t-shirt and pajamas he'd worn to bed the previous night. Margot Tosca Sarah, Beau's wife in all of her various names, had been put into witness protection nearly a year earlier when she saw her boyfriend Charles kill a man and learned he was involved in organized crime. She had moved to Beau's hometown of Juniper Ridge soon after. They met and fell in love there, and Charles found her. She and Beau had moved again, marrying and taking on new identities, that of Adam and Sarah Beckstead, who had been married 3 years and hailed from Arizona and Alabama. As Bo climbed under the water, letting it run over his head and down his back, he tried not to think about everything he left behind in Colorado. He didn't regret choosing to marry Tosca and move away with her, regardless of her changed name and background, even if he deeply missed his own family and the farm on which he'd grown up. The nightmares weren't helping at all. If they could just get through the court case and return to Montana unscathed, he knew things would settle down, and the rampant PTSD he was dealing with would get better. It certainly couldn't get much worse. He finished his shower and got dressed for the day. The milking would wait for no man.
Tosca lay in bed, listening to the water run in the next room. Bo never talked about his nightmares or what he saw in them. She thought they had worked through the worst of his issues before they moved to Montana, but the past few weeks proved otherwise. The occasional nightmare had turned into nearly one per night. He was growing more withdrawn and holding back pieces of himself from her, even when she prodded him to share. He was as sweet and helpful around their tiny little cottage as ever, but there was a piece of him that used to be in their relationship that he was holding back now. She turned over in bed and wiped at the tear on her cheek. Had she done this to him? Had following her to this new place damaged him in ways they hadn't been able to anticipate? Did he regret the decision? She didn't know, and she didn't dare ask. If he said yes, would she be able to handle it? At first, the move had seemed fine. They were so in love, so happy, and they liked their jobs, the new town, and the people they met. But she couldn't help her growing worry as the court date approached, and his worsening nightmares weren't helping her stress level. She hoped and prayed that things would calm down when Charles was in prison once and for all. Even though they wouldn't be able to come out of hiding and resume their old lives, at least the pressure would be released. The water turned off, and she closed her eyes. She didn't want him to know she was still awake, or he would worry, and he didn't need one more thing to worry about. She put her hand over her stomach. It had been well over a month since she'd had her cycle. Was it stress, or was she pregnant? She didn't know and didn't have the courage to find out. Not yet. If she was, what would Bo think? Would he feel even more trapped than he already seemed to feel? Or would he be excited? They'd talked about kids, hoped to start a family, but hadn't intended to do so quite yet. Was it too soon? She thought of the new life that could be growing in her womb and hoped everything would work out somehow. 2 window clings of witches and ghosts decorated the windows of the small-town medical clinic, and a plastic pumpkin on the counter held black and orange spider rings and stickers of superheroes to give to children after their appointment. Tosca held out 2 stickers to a 3-year-old with a sniffly nose. "Dat one," he said, pointing to the Hulk. "He's my favorite." "He's pretty tough," Tosca said. "Just like you. You were very good while the doctor was checking you out. I hope you feel better by Halloween." "What do you say, Robert?" his mother prompted. "Thanks," he called before racing for the front door. "You're welcome." Tosca smiled, loving his enthusiasm. When she thought of having kids, that was the kind of image she wanted to carry with her, even if the mom did look a little tired and harried. And the name Robert. It was Bo's real name, but would they dare use it for a son while they were still in hiding? She pushed the thought aside and returned to her work. She needed to sanitize the room so she could bring in the next kid. The last 2 hours of work passed in a whirlwind as patients came and went, with every complaint from bunions to needing new heart medicine. Tosca did her best to be patient, cheerful, and friendly, but by the end of the day she was ready for a breather. It had been a rough few days, but she was determined to change things at home. She and Bo were not going to be sad and quiet with a house full of tension. There were 27 days until the court case opened in Atlanta, and in the meantime, she was going to make the most of things. Having decided that, Tosca went to the tiny grocery store and bought bananas, bread, milk, and toppings for pizza, a pre-made par-baked crust, ice cream, and some Halloween decorations. So what if they lived out in the middle of nowhere? That didn't mean they couldn't be festive, did it? She picked up a bag of fake cobwebs in spooky green, a skeleton to hang on the front door, and window clings with an assortment of chubby vampires that could almost pass as well-dressed cupids. They made her smile. At the checkout stand, she waited for the gossiping clerk and customer to move through the basket of food while taking their time to catch up. She checked out the magazine covers on the racks beside her. Some celebrity was having someone's baby. Someone who was apparently not the man she was currently married to. A well-known actor was being blamed for the death of his girlfriend, who had driven impaired a couple of months earlier and died in a car accident. And look who secretly got married. She didn't really care about any of it, and let her gaze wander the room, taking in the teens gabbing by the Twinkies, the little girls debating movies with their mom, and the dark-haired man standing by the ice cream, watching her instead of making a selection. He glanced away as soon as she looked in his direction, but she was sure he had been watching her. "Thanks for coming. It was good to talk to you," the clerk said to the other woman as she passed over the receipt. "Come to the party. It's going to be great." "Very casual," the customer promised, then trundled off with her cart full of groceries. "Well, how are you doing today?" the female clerk asked as she reached into the cart for Tosca's items. "I'm well, thanks." She pulled out her purse and got her credit card ready, then glanced at the man who was looking at her again. The hair on the back of her neck prickled and she averted her face, though she was sure he had already gotten a good enough look at her. "Looks like you're getting ready for Halloween," the 40-something clerk said, pushing back her dark hair. "Yes, I wasn't going to because we live so far out, but I just couldn't help myself. I love Halloween." Tosca slid her credit card through the machine and tried to pretend she wasn't fully aware that the man had gotten into the next line over with something from the freezer aisle. Was he following her, or was it a coincidence? Tosca decided to be safe, and after saying goodbye to the clerk, hurried to her car. She would take the long way around to her road. The dirt road led past only a few ranches, including the one where Bo worked and they lived, before dumping onto a nearly forgotten county road on the other side. She got in the car and began driving up and down streets, around random corners, and doubling back on herself, wanting to be sure she wasn't followed to the ranch. She knew she was being crazy and paranoid, but couldn't seem to help herself. After what happened in July, she didn't want to take any risks. When she reached home, Tosca was sure no one was following her, and she was relieved to find Bo's truck parked out front. She glanced at her watch and realized she'd taken longer than she'd planned at the store, and her circuitous route home. She usually beat him to the house at night. Though she wanted to look over her shoulder at every step, she managed to walk up the wooden front stairs to the covered porch and breeze inside. "Hello." "Hey, you're home." Bo emerged from the bedroom in the back. "I was starting to wonder if you got lost or waylaid at work." He greeted her with a kiss, but it was much briefer than it would have been a couple of months earlier, and he seemed a little distracted. Tosca couldn't help the disappointment that welled inside her, but she kept her smile in place. She was going to be happy, darn it, even if it killed her. "Pizza tonight?" he asked, looking at the crust in the closest bag. "Yes, I grabbed ham, pineapple, olives, and mushrooms for your half." She didn't like fruit on her pizzas, but she knew he did and liked to see him smile. "Are those all of the bags?" He looked over the groceries she'd carried in. "Yes, I didn't get much. Could you shred some cheese?" She passed over the block and he got to work with the grater. They talked about their day as they prepared the food, and she dragged him into helping her decorate the windows and front porch while the pizza cooked. "We never decorated for Halloween back home," he admitted as he wrapped the cotton batting over a nail. "Considering you were even more remote than this, that doesn't surprise me. I bet you still went trick-or-treating, though." "Oh, yeah. Hank and I were the kings of the candy stash. Marsh could never compete." They hung the skeleton, stretched spider webbing from beam to beam, and added fake spiders to complete the look. "We definitely need to decorate more for holidays," Tosca said as she looked at the finished product. "We sure do. Thanks for thinking of it." Bo pulled her close for the kind of kiss he used to give her when she arrived home. If a little spiderweb can make you kiss me like that, I might never clean the corners of the room again." She wound her arms around his neck and kissed him again, enjoying the moment. They heard the timer ding from the stove, and Bo pulled her back inside. "Now for the pizza." Tosca smiled and laughed, kept up appearances, and worked to bring a bright spirit into the house. In the back of her mind, she couldn't forget about the man at the grocery store. Had he just liked the look of her, or was there something more to the way he had stared? "Okay, what's bothering you?" Bo asked when they had finished up the dishes. "You're gnawing on something, and I want to know what." He took her by the hand and led her back to the dining table, sitting in one of the chairs and pulling her to stand between his knees, which made her only a little taller than him. She should have turned it back on him, considering how quiet he'd been lately about his nightmares, but it was time to tell him what happened, even if it was probably nothing. "When I was at the grocery store, some man was watching me." "You mean like he was checking out my hot wife? Or he was watching you?" Bo asked for clarification. She pressed her lips together. "He was watching. It didn't look like he was interested, not like you mean anyway. It was something more, something else." Bo's mouth pressed in a frown. "You think Charles has found you again? Did he follow you home?" "No and no. I'm probably just being paranoid. I took a random route to get home tonight and no one was following me. I'm sure of it. It didn't look like they were even trying. It was probably nothing." "But better safe than sorry," Bo finished for her. "You were right to be careful when you came home, and to tell me. I wish I could drive you into work. Let me know if there's anything else that's even slightly suspicious. If there's any sign there's more to this guy, we need to call it in immediately for help. And keep your gun handy." She frowned. He'd insisted on her getting a concealed carry permit when they moved to Montana, but she hated carrying. "You know how I feel about guns at work." He lifted his hand and touched a finger to her lips. "I know. I'm sorry, they'll hack, but your safety is too important to take any chances with. Got it?" The soft concern in his eyes undid her and she nodded. "Good. Now, how about if you join me in front of the television? I know how much you like bones." She smiled and nodded. Her happiness had little to do with the show, and far more to do with the man in her arms. She would go anywhere with him. She just hoped he felt the same.
"Boss, I found her." "You're sure this time?" Charles asked, looking up from his profit and loss spreadsheet. It wasn't the first time since Margot had disappeared again that one of his goons thought he'd found her. The assistance he'd gotten from one of the feds had at least narrowed their search to the small town outside of Missoula, Montana. "Yes. She hasn't changed her hair since Colorado. And she's working in a clinic. The guy she was dating in Colorado is there too. They live on a ranch outside of town." "Perfect." Charles smiled with satisfaction as he checked his calendar. "I won't make it to town until tomorrow night. Keep an eye on them." After months of disappointment, things were finally coming together for him.
3. The next day, as Bo filled the cow feeders with hay, he thought about Tosca's experience at the grocery store. Was she being paranoid, or had Charles really found them again? They had both been so careful. He'd sent a couple of postcards home to his family to let them know he and Tosca were safe, but he'd sent them in an envelope to a couple of his army buddies, asking them to post them for him, preferably when they traveled to another town. The postcards held no reference to their new identities or locations, just a note to say they were safe. He didn't want his mom to worry. There had been no social media, no email, and no other contact with anyone except for John, the U.S. Marshal who had placed them in their current location, so Bo couldn't see how Charles could have tracked them. One of the cows nudged his hand, and he pushed the worry away for now, focusing on his work instead. He'd talked to Tosca again that night.
When Tosca didn't see anything out of the ordinary on her way to work that day, she wondered if the guy's interest in her the previous day had been her imagination. She watched cars around her, paid attention to anyone who had been paying attention to her, and felt like a fool by the time she reached the clinic. On the way home, she thought she saw a maroon sedan following her, but it turned off down a side street. She shook her head as she watched it in the rearview mirror. "You need to calm down," she told herself. Still, she didn't head straight for the ranch, taking a couple of side trips to make sure she really wasn't being followed. Bo met her at the door again. "Hey, I finished up early. What do you say we go out for something to eat for a change?" She smiled and slid into his arms. That sounds great. Tosca heard the sound of a car passing on the main road and looked up in time to see a maroon sedan driving slowly past the ranch entrance about 100 yards away. She froze as she saw there was just a driver, and he was turned, looking their direction. He was too far away to identify, though. "What's wrong?" Bo asked, glancing over his shoulder toward where she was staring. "That car. I swear it was following me earlier tonight. I thought I lost it, but I must not have." A shiver went down her back. Or maybe it's not the same one and I'm imagining things. I've been getting kind of twitchy lately. Bo pulled her into the house. "So much for eating out. I think there are a couple of TV dinners in the freezer. How about you cook them up while I give John a call?" He flipped the door lock and pulled the drapes closed over the windows. His careful attention to detail made Tosca's heart rate speed up as she worried that he had reason to be concerned. But she went through the motions of preparing the meals for the oven. "John?" Bo asked into his cell phone. "Maybe we're being paranoid, but Tosca thinks someone's been following her. Is there any chance there's a leak in your office?" He ran his free hand through his light brown hair, which was in need of a trim and feathered down to cover his ears. He moved around the room like a caged animal. "You're sure? Because I'm not taking a chance with her. There's less than a month until the court case." He explained what she had seen the previous day, and about the car, occasionally asking Tosca for a few details. She emptied the dishwasher and loaded the breakfast dishes. In her head, she was already figuring out what to pack and worrying about how Bo would react to another move. He was settled into this new home with his new job. Would he be okay with moving again, starting over one more time? Tosca tried to focus on the work before her, on the conversation he was having with John, but the doubt lingered in her head. "So, what did he say?" she asked when Bo finally hung up. "He's going to look into it, and he said you should probably call in sick tomorrow while he checks it out. Complain about a terrible stomach bug or something." "Right, okay." That made her even more nervous, so she got out the bagged salad from the fridge and set some on their plates, adding kidney beans and shredded cheese on top. "Hey," Bo came up behind her and rubbed his hands along her shoulder, offering comfort. He was nearly 6'2" and broad-shouldered. She always felt small in his arms at 5'5". "I know it's scary, but we'll get through this. It's probably nothing, just a coincidence, but we'll be careful and take precautions anyway. All right?" Tosca leaned back against him, desperately wanting to soak in his comfort, wishing she weren't so mixed up inside. "I know. I'm glad you're here with me. I wouldn't have it any other way." He leaned down and dropped a kiss in the crook of her neck, then backed off. "Do you want to start with the salad while the rest finishes baking?" He took the plates to the little table, which was only a few feet away since they had such a small house. "Yeah, sure." She didn't feel hungry at all, but she wasn't going to make a thing out of it. She promised herself she wasn't. They ate in near silence, which was oppressive, though she usually found silence with him comfortable. After dinner, she cleared the dishes, then went over to the window, pulling back the drapes a little and looking into the darkness. There were no cars on the road now. Maybe it really had been her imagination. She smiled to Bo, who was already stretched out on the bed, a hunting magazine open in his hands as he relaxed after the long workday. Everything would be fine. But when Tosca reloaded the washer and folded the clean clothes back into the basket, she couldn't help thinking that the basket would be easy to grab if they had to run. Tosca woke up early enough to make breakfast the next morning. She felt tired and ready to drop after several nightmares about being chased. She hadn't slept well, and Bo had to be at work in 15 minutes. He had been restless and talked in his sleep as well, though that was becoming a regular thing lately. "More laundry? I didn't think there was anything else to wash," Bo teased when she started folding the last of the clothes. She smiled, since it was what he wanted, and nodded. "And I'll do one more load with sheets and towels this morning. I feel bad about calling in sick. I feel fine, and it was probably no big deal anyway." Bo stood from the table and came over to join her by the dryer. "We don't take any chances, okay? It's Friday. If everything looks fine by Sunday night, you can go back to work Monday and it'll be no big deal. He tipped her head up and kissed her. I wish I could take the day off with you. I'll see if Hal can keep me on this side of the ranch today, and I'll keep my cell phone with me. Call if you see or hear anything, okay? Tosca looked into his eyes, smiling with more confidence than she felt. Of course. That's no problem. Have fun milking the cows. He kissed her, soft and gentle, lingering over it for a good long while as she leaned up against him. I love you, babe. I love you too. She released him and watched him walk out of the house. She'd watched him put his gun in his ankle holster that morning and had checked the smaller pistol he'd bought for her after their move. It was probably foolish, but she couldn't help reaching for the holster at the small of her back where she'd stashed it before breakfast. She really hoped she never had to use it. Nervous energy flowed through her, so Tosca spent the morning scrubbing up the kitchen, organizing the dining area, and dusting the house. She stopped for a quick sandwich around 1 o'clock, then got back to work, determined the place was going to sparkle by the time Bo got off work. She had no idea what she would do the next 2 days if she was going to be stuck hiding in their cottage.
Bo felt restless energy running through him as he worked around the ranch. His boss, Hal, had known one of the U.S. Marshals for a long time and understood there was a reason Bo needed the job when the Marshal asked about a position. He didn't ask why Bo wanted to work closer to home this morning, just assigned him a bunch of tasks in sight of their cottage and took the other employee out to do other work. Bo appreciated the understanding and discretion. Bo worked as quickly as possible, as though that would hasten the end of the day, when he could be back in the cottage with his wife. She'd been acting odd the past few days. Was it just nerves about being found? Or was there something more to it? He didn't know. He caught himself looking up several times when vehicles drove along the quiet road in front of the ranch. But it wasn't until he'd seen the maroon sedan pass the property twice that he pulled out his phone again. He didn't recognize the car, and it hadn't been on the other end of the road long enough to have stopped to visit anyone at the other ranches. "John, are you sure everything's okay? I keep seeing that car," Bo asked when the marshal picked up on the other end. John paused for a moment, apparently taken aback by Bo's abrupt greeting. "You saw it again?" "Yes, I've never seen it before, and now we've seen it several times in less than 24 hours? Maybe someone local just bought it, or maybe we just never noticed it before, but it's making me nervous." "Maybe you should take a little vacation," John suggested after a moment. "I'll send someone out to watch for the guy, check out who it is, and we'll get back to you." "How long are you talking about?" Bo asked. His eyes didn't leave the road as he watched the sedan come back in their direction. "Never mind. I'm packing a bag and getting my wife out of here. I'll call you in a few days. Until then, we'll be out of contact." He hung up and called Hal's number as he headed for the cottage at a lope. "Yeah, what's going on?" Hal asked Bo when he answered the phone. "I'm really sorry. Something's come up. I have to have some time off, starting right now." "How much time off?" Hal asked. "Hopefully just a couple of days, but maybe a lot more than that." Bo hoped Hal understood what he meant without having to come right out and say it. When he'd interviewed Bo for the job, Hal had made a cryptic comment about understanding the nature of his situation. "You've been a real help here. I hate to see you go. I hate to go. I'll understand if you hire someone else." He was huffing a little now and wished he hadn't gotten so lazy since he'd been released from the army. "If you come back, I'll try to find you a spot here." "I appreciate it." Bo hurried up the porch stairs. "Goodbye." He hung up after Hal had reciprocated and then burst into the cottage. "Pack your bags," he said to his startled wife. "We're getting out of here."
Poor Tosca didn't know what to think when Bo rushed in, telling her to pack her bags. What? Did John decide it's not safe after all? "I think it's not safe. Turn off your cell phone and let's get packing. I want to be out of here in 10 minutes. 5 would be better." Tosca's heart pounded, but she grabbed the filled laundry baskets and shoved them at him. "Stick those in the car." Then she stuffed their bathroom things into a bag along with their spare cash, credit cards, and the few mementos they owned. She set that by the front door and went to the kitchen, tossing simple, easy food into a plastic grocery bag while Beau pulled all of the bullets and his spare pistol from the box under the bed. Her hands shook and tears started to flow down her cheeks, but she worked as fast as she could, not wanting to slow him down. She should have been packing a bag this morning instead of cleaning. When she met Beau at the door, he took her hand. "Let's go. Hopefully this is just precautionary." Right. She glanced back over her shoulder at the cottage. At least she was leaving it clean. Even if it seemed stupid to be worrying about that at this point, it seemed like all she had done for the past year was run. Even dating Charles in the first place had been a type of running from herself. When she had looked at Charles, all she had seen was a successful man who was nothing like the losers she'd dated before. She'd been right about that anyway. None of them had been killers. Tosca got into the car and pulled on her seatbelt. "Are you going to tell me what happened?" she asked as he stuck the key in the ignition. "Let's get onto the road first." "Where are we going?" "I have no idea. I thought we'd head east and talk about it from there." They had a shiny, not quite new car they had bought hours before arriving at the ranch. He pulled it onto the main road and headed for town. "I saw that sedan again, several times today. We're not taking any risks. John said he'd send someone to check things out before we come back." "What about my job, Beau? What about yours?" She hated leaving the clinic in the lurch. They were already short-staffed. Beau's mouth formed a tight line. "Hal made it clear I can come back if we're able to in the near future. Hopefully this is nothing and we'll be back on schedule by Monday. But if it's something, then we won't be going back." Tosca closed her eyes and turned her head to face the window. She didn't want Beau to see how hard this was for her. She was already the reason he'd have to start over a second time. Beau's hand slid over hers. "I know it's a lot to deal with. I'm sorry this is happening to you." "Yeah, just to me, not to you, right?" She managed not to roll her eyes at that. He always seemed to feel responsible for things going wrong, even if he had nothing to do with it. "It's not your fault." "I promised to keep you safe," he said. "I'm not sure if I'm doing a good job of it." "You are. Sometimes things are out of our hands." A tear slid down her cheek and she blamed it on the hormones. Not that she'd taken a pregnancy test yet, but that had to be why she was so messed up, right? They drove in silence as Beau turned south toward the freeway, then headed east. "There's not much out this direction," she said. "I know. We'll be fine. Bozeman should only be 2 or 3 hours away. We'll pull off there and get something to eat. Then we can discuss our options." He squeezed her hand and Tosca leaned back, trying to get comfortable. To her surprise, she dozed a little, waking as they passed a road sign that said they were only 20 miles to Bozeman. "Wow, I guess the stress has been getting to me," she said as she stretched a little. "You didn't sleep well last night." It was a statement, not a question. "Neither did you," she reminded him. "Guilty," Beau acknowledged. "I've been getting nervous about the court case and making sure you get there and out again safely. I think it's making the nightmares worse." She hadn't thought about that. "I thought they were war nightmares." "Most of them are, but some involve you too." He waited a few seconds, then changed the subject. "I'm starving. What do you think about grabbing a bite and finding a hotel to crash at for the night?" Sounds fine. She wished he would talk about his dreams more, the way he used to when they were still dating. "Also, I thought we should try hitting the ATM before we take off in the morning again. If there's a chance someone might track us down that way, it would be best if we got as much cash as possible now. I have 2,000 already, but you never know." Tosca goggled. "You have how much cash? Why?" He stared through the front window, his thumbs running over the steering wheel bumps for a moment before he responded. "I was always afraid it might come down to this, that we might make a mistake and have to pick up and run again. I didn't want to risk not having enough cash to get us by." She read between the lines to pick up on what he wasn't saying. "You thought I was going to mess up again and tip him off to where I was?" Tosca felt crushed by his lack of trust in her. It hadn't occurred to her before, but had Beau been thinking all along that she had done something to draw Charles' attention to them now? "No, I didn't say that." "But that's what you meant. You think I did something stupid and that's how he found us again. If he found us again. Honey. Bo grabbed her hand and gave it a squeeze. You know I'm just trying to be careful. He waited a couple of beats before asking, Is there any chance you did something that could be tracked? No. She pulled her hand out of his and turned to the window, doing her best to hold the emotions in check. I haven't called anyone, sent emails, or even been online for anything since we moved, unless it was directly related to work, at the office. How can you think that? Sarah, Tosca, I didn't really think you made a mistake. I just wanted to be sure. If you say so, I believe you. Everything churned up inside her. Did he really believe her, or was he just saying that? Sometimes I think you wish you never married me, that you stayed in Juniper Ridge on your farm with your family. I wouldn't blame you. I don't, I swear. Bo huffed a little and she looked over to see him swallow hard. I miss them. A lot. But I knew that would happen. I've been there before. You're more important to me than my farm. You have to know that. I just need a little longer to adjust to the thought of possibly never seeing any of them again. Did Hank finally get things worked out with Jokel? How many kids will they have before we finally get to see pictures? How is my mom doing? These questions won't go away. I can find ways to let them know we're still alive from time to time. But that's it, and it's hard. His words felt oppressive. She'd done that to him, caused him that much pain. How could she ever make it up to him? I'm sorry. I never should have gone out with you to begin with. It was a mistake. If it wasn't for me, you'd be happy. She covered her face with her hands. The car slowed as Bo brought it to the shoulder of the freeway. Traffic was slow, but he didn't take any chances and put plenty of space between them. Don't even start that. He wrapped his hand around her upper arm and pulled her into his chest, cradling her close. I don't regret it. How can you not? I've messed up everything, and now we'll have to start over again. Where are we going anyway? Are we meeting John somewhere? You should just let him take me somewhere else and you can go home. Are you saying you don't want me with you? His voice sounded panicked. Don't leave me, honey. Please don't. Her hands wrapped up around his neck, pulling him closer. Desperate for his reassurance. I don't want you to go away. I'm just scared. He tipped her face up and kissed her, pouring himself into it, pulling her onto his lap across the console. I won't leave you, Tosca. I promise. Why would you even think that? His lips skimmed along her jaw and then to the hollow below her ear, making her toes curl. Hormones, and my own fear. She enjoyed the touch of his lips against her skin, but another car breezed past theirs, making it sway slightly, and she shifted on his lap, leaning back to see his face better. You just seem so unhappy, deep down, and you won't talk to me, not really. You used to, but you don't now. Bo tucked her hair back behind her ear and wiped at the damp spots on her cheeks. I'm sorry. It's not because of you, I promise. I'm just not dealing with everything as well as I should be. I'm trying not to make it harder on you, so I guess I haven't been talking much. It's harder on me when you don't talk about what's bothering you, Bo. Apparently he'd given up on using her latest name, so she saw no reason to do differently. I'm sorry, honey. Okay, new rule. I'll talk about things when they start to bother me. Same for you. Tosca bit her lip, wondering if that meant she should tell him that she thought she was pregnant, but she didn't actually know yet, so she decided to keep her suspicions to herself until she could verify them. She nodded. I promise. Okay, let's get back on the road. We'll find somewhere to eat and go from there. He kissed her briefly in punctuation and then helped her back to her side of the car. When the seatbelt was in place, he pulled onto the road again and headed for town. For the record, being with you is worth not being able to be with my family. She studied his face in the failing light. Are you sure? Yes, I'm as sure now as I was before we married. I love you, and nothing is going to change that. He covered her hand, twining their fingers together. Tosca felt better, letting herself relax a little as he took the exit and found a little diner. When they were seated in the quiet location, Tosca let herself think about the future. Once the waitress had taken their order, she asked Bo, "So what next?" "I've been thinking about that." He took both of her hands on the tabletop, holding them lightly, his touch reassuring. We could get a hotel room here for a couple of days while we wait for John to do his thing. We also need to consider where else we could start over, if this isn't a false alarm. Do you have anywhere you'd really like to live that Charles wouldn't know about? She considered that for a long moment. Hawaii sounds terrific when I think of the winters in Montana, but we have to be realistic too. How about you? Bo hesitated a little. I've never given it much thought, to be honest. I never really wanted to live anywhere but Juniper Ridge, especially not after some of my travels with the Army. I have a friend in Missouri, someone I served with several years ago. We haven't really been in touch lately, so there shouldn't be a paper trail, but a mutual friend mentioned last spring that he had moved home. I have Jason's information. I know he would put us up for a little bit, maybe help us get reestablished somewhere, or just give us a few days to breathe while we decide what to do next. Are you sure? Tosca studied him across the table. I mean, we have the court thing, but after that we'll have to have somewhere permanent. Missouri. She wasn't sure what she thought of that. I've seen pictures. It's a pretty area, even if they don't have real mountains. His eyes twinkled a little at the comment. He lives in a little suburb of Kansas City, so it's not exactly rural, but I can probably find work anywhere. I'm pretty handy. John would put us back in witness protection, Tosca said, wondering if that's what she wanted. Bo nodded and spoke carefully. I've considered that, except that if it wasn't you and it wasn't me who led Charles back to us, and if it was Charles, then we can't trust them anymore, can we? John's office is the only other place where Charles could have gotten our information. Tosca bit her lip, feeling sick at the thought. I don't know. I mean, I don't like to think that someone sold us out. Me neither, baby. The waitress brought their sandwiches, and Bo pulled away so they could eat. First, we have to give John time to see if we're just being paranoid, then we can decide where to go. We need to get to Walmart to get a phone that they can't trace, and we can get a hotel for the night to make our plans. That sounded like a great idea to Tosca. She was already exhausted. The trip to Walmart was interesting. Bo bought a burner phone with $50 of talk time on it. He picked up a couple of prepaid credit cards and put extra money on one of them. He also stocked up on crackers and apples and grabbed a couple of huge duffel bags. What are the bags for? Tosca asked. It's easier to travel with your clothes in a bag instead of a laundry basket. Besides, they're handy. You can never have too many duffels. Tosca seriously doubted that, but didn't argue. He seemed to have a plan of action. When they finished up there, Bo found a Best Western near a freeway exit and got them a room for the night. It wasn't the best-kept place Tosca had ever stayed, but it was quiet and had a bed to stretch out on. She was surprised that Bo parked the car down the building quite a distance so it wasn't outside their room. Why did you park there? She asked when he came back inside. It was cold, pushing down near freezing, and he had to make a couple of trips from the car to their room with their things. I like it under the lamppost. It's too dark over here. He handed over the laundry baskets of clothes she'd packed and the duffels he'd bought. We should move everything over. I'm not sure if it's smart to take the car all the way to Jason's. You have a paranoid mind. Yes. He started packing one of the bags. Keep your cell phone turned off from now on, staccato. I don't want to risk being trackable. She wondered if he had reason to believe they would be tracked if they drove. So if you're not planning on taking the car, what's the plan? Airplane? You'd like that, wouldn't you? He teased, knowing she didn't like to fly. You're not even funny. Maybe by bus. That's trackable too if they know what they're doing. I'll call to see what I can figure out about routes and schedules after I call Jason. They finished moving things over and changed for bed. She watched him move around the hotel room, humming a country song under his breath. He flipped the locking flap at the top of the door in addition to the main door lock, and went to the window, drawing the curtains tighter together, then poked his head out to look into the parking lot. It's quiet out there. That's sort of why you picked this dive, isn't it? She asked. Are you going to come to bed? Bo grinned at her as he flipped off his lamp, leaving just hers on low. I think so, yeah. He leaned in and kissed her, pulling the two of them closer together. I just had a few things to take care of before I settled in. You act like you think we're going to come under siege. Tosca tried to keep her voice light and playful, but his behavior had her own paranoia growing. Hope not. I wouldn't want any interruptions. His lips touched hers again, and she sank into the warmth of his arms. Things were just getting interesting when their car horn started to bleat. It took Beau a moment before he seemed to realize it was their car, and he released her, scrambling off the bed to peek out the window. "What is it?" Tosca asked, a little disoriented. "Did someone try to break into our car?" "I don't know." He clicked the button on the key fob to make it shut up, but didn't move away from the window. "Cut the light, will you?" Tosca rolled over and turned off the lamp, then came to stand behind him, watching out the thin break between the curtains he'd made. "Is someone out there still?" she asked in a low voice. "We'll wait and see." After several more minutes, she returned to the bed, still tired despite her nap and the comparatively early hour of 10. Beau continued to sit in perfect stillness, watching and waiting. "You are a very patient man. Come away from the window and join me," she suggested. "Just a few more minutes. I can't move yet." His words were barely more than a breath. "There we go. Come here and tell me if you recognize either of these two guys." Tosca had an odd feeling come over her, and she stood, moving toward him. She could see two figures in the darkness. The lights were mostly behind them, and their backs were to her. They approached the car again and stopped to peek in the windows, careful not to touch the car itself. The one turned toward the other, and she caught his profile, sucking in a breath. "That's the man from the grocery store. I'm sure it is." Foreboding shooting through her, Tosca shifted her gaze to the other guy. She recognized that hair, those shoulders, the confident way he stood. "That's Charles. I know the other guy is Charles. It has to be. They found us. How did they find us, Beau?" "They must have put a tracker on the car. Get dressed. This might not be pretty." Beau stood and grabbed his jeans, sliding them over his pajama bottoms, then grabbed the phone on the nightstand, calling 911. He checked on the guys again, grabbed his Glock, and after checking to see that she had slid on some shoes and her coat, he pushed the alarm button on the car again. It started to blare, and the men took off, diving around a corner. "Yeah, hi, I'm calling from my hotel," he said into the phone. "Some guys are trying to break into our car." He gave them the address and name of the hotel and then hung up. When police sirens were audible, he turned to her. "Ready?" She nodded, hefting one of the duffels over her shoulder. He grabbed the other one. "When you reach the car, get right into the back and stay down no matter what happens." "I will." He nodded and opened the door, running out in front of her. The car lights flashed, signaling that the doors had unlocked, and Tosca dived into the back as instructed. A gun went off, the bullet hitting the car, and she moved lower in front of the seat as Beau put the key in the ignition and threw it into reverse. He pulled out of the parking lot on the right side of the building as the police pulled in on the other side. He gunned it and veered down a side street, then hooked a left, and a couple of blocks later hooked another left. Tosca came up on her knees, looking out the window into the night. "Stay down until I say differently." Beau pulled into an alley behind a grocery store and got out of the car with a flashlight. Tosca laid there, anxiety filling her as she listened to him move around the car, stopping to crouch or kneel down several times where she couldn't see him. Finally, he came back to the driver's seat and put the car into gear. "Just a few more blocks, and then you can come up here with me." "What were you looking for? The tracker?" "Yes." "Did you find one?" "Yes. I didn't have time to open the hood and check for a second one. We're still too close to the hotel. They could catch up with us any time, so we'll get away from here. I can't be sure there isn't a bug, so don't talk about our plans. We'll just have to deal for a while." Tosca considered that. It made sense, even if it made her sick to think about it. "Have we talked about anything in the car?" "Other than the hotel plans, I don't think so. I think we discussed the rest elsewhere. How are you holding up back there?" She felt a little sick, honestly, but she wasn't going to worry him about that, not unless it didn't calm down soon. She really wished he would stop turning corners, though. It was nauseating. Finally, he stopped at a bank ATM. "Okay, come on up." He patted the seat beside him, then rolled down the window and slid their debit card into the machine. Tosca climbed out of the back and came around to the front seat, belting herself back in. Bo pulled money out from two of their accounts, and they headed east again on I-90, straight for Billings. Sometime later, he pulled off at the exit for the Overland Golf Course. "I need to make that call we talked about," he said when Tosca gave him a funny look. Bo stepped out of the car with his phone and an address book he often carried. He searched the book, then dialed a number as he moved farther away, the phone to his ear. She wished he wasn't concerned about being overheard. She was curious about what this Jason guy would say. It took nearly 15 minutes before Bo joined her again. "We're set. I'll tell you more later." He pressed a quick kiss to her lips before pulling back onto the freeway. That took a while. "There were extra arrangements to make besides just the main issue," Bo said cryptically. Tosca nodded, wondering if he meant the bus issue. Would there be a bus going out soon? Or would they have to sit at the depot for most of the day? And would there be a building they could go inside of, or would they have to stand out in the air and freeze? "Quit thinking so hard, honey. It's going to be fine." Tosca nodded, but she wasn't sure if she totally believed him. 6. It was nearly 3 in the morning when Bo and Tosca drove into Billings. There had been no sign of anyone following, but Tosca knew that even if Charles had managed to get a second tracker onto the car, he might not be on their tail right away, what with the police in the parking lot at the hotel. She just hoped Bo's plan would give them somewhere safe to wait for the bus to Missouri. He had her read off the directions he'd written during his conversation with Jason, and she directed them into town. Bo didn't stop when they got to the bus depot, though, continuing on past by a few blocks, then turning a corner and going several more blocks until they came to a large parking lot outside of a Denny's. "Zip up," he directed. "Time to unload." Tosca helped to pull out their things, and he took both of the heavier duffel bags they'd filled at the motel. She was puzzled to watch him turn on his old phone again, send a text message, and then pull out the SD card before dropping the phone on the floor beneath the seat. She kept her mouth shut, watching curiously. Bo locked the doors, leaving the key under the driver's side mat, then turned to her. "It's cold." He grabbed her zipper and finished pulling it all the way up, then lifted the hood over her hair. "Don't want you to freeze, do we?" He brushed his fingers over her cheek before pulling his black beanie cap down over his own head and ears, completely covering his hair. Shouldering the duffels, he headed for the sidewalk, turning back toward the bus depot. Tosca waited until they were far enough away not to be overheard by a bug on the car before finally asking him, "What was that all about with your phone?" "I sent a message to John telling him we were going off-grid until the court case and asking him to have someone pick up the car. We may be able to use it again afterward. If not, the government paid for it, and they should be able to sell it. But you left your phone. So they can find the car. Again, it's their phone, and they can track it if it's turned on. They might be able to track yours too, so leave it off for now. We'll decide how we feel about that later." It should take them a while to get here, even if he did somehow get the message in the middle of the night. He checked his watch. "Our bus leaves in about 3 hours. Sorry about the hike back to the bus depot. I probably should have dropped you there and dumped the car myself, but I didn't want to leave you alone." "That's fine." She shivered as cold pushed through her coat layers. "I'd rather not be alone, and a little walk won't hurt me." It wasn't the best part of town, and Tosca was glad to be walking with Bo. They didn't see anyone as they moved down the dark streets, but a few cars passed, shining their bright headlights. She'd spent most of her life in Atlanta, but, though she knew better, this felt much bigger, darker. Maybe that was her imagination. "How are you holding up? You haven't exactly gotten a lot of sleep in the past couple of days?" Bo asked. "Fine, I've done better than you anyway. But I guess you don't feel tired because you've trained to deal with it?" He'd told her about some of the long, sleepless stretches he'd worked when he was in the Army. "Oh, I still feel tired, but I'm used to it. You looked kind of pale when we were still in the car." "It's just lack of sleep," she said lightly. "I'm worried about you." His voice was a little gruff with frustration. "I know you are. You shouldn't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm cold, but we'll be there soon and then it'll be okay. When does our bus pull out? 6:30, she sighed. No rest for the wicked, and none for you either, apparently, he teased. So where are we going? What did your friend say when you called him? Jason will meet us in Kansas City at the bus depot. We'll pull in about 6:30 tomorrow morning, Tosca nodded. And how long did he say we could stay? As long as we need to. We'll work out the details after we've had a good night's sleep and time to think about what to do. They trudged down the freezing streets for several more minutes before she voiced her thoughts. So you really have no idea what we'll do next? For the moment, I'm focusing on now. I have some thoughts, but I wanted to talk them over with you and Jason. I'm hoping we can find a place to live there, get jobs, settle in, but I wanted to see the area and get your feelings. If you have other ideas once you've had a chance to adjust, we'll reevaluate. She nodded, though she didn't know if he could tell with the hood covering her head. She needed a good night's sleep and a chance to get her bearings, and if she was going to spend 24 hours in a bus, she didn't think a good night's sleep was in her near future. Do you think Charles might be able to track us to Kansas City? If he can get a contact in John's office, why not track us through the bus line? Bo didn't speak for a moment. I figured if we bought tickets to Denver, which is the hub anyway, then we could buy new tickets there to get us to Kansas City. Hopefully they'll figure we went back to Juniper Ridge at first and that will give us a little extra time. But it'll still be us buying the tickets. She smiled as she got an idea. How good of an actor are you? He shot her a sideways glance. You have something in mind? Oh, yeah. The bus depot was large and well lit. People crowded the seats. Moms with kids, little old ladies, a couple of guys with tattoos and nose piercings. A woman stood behind a counter protected by bulletproof glass. What can I get for you? She asked when Bo and Tosca approached her. 2 tickets to Denver, Bo said in a heavy Italian accent. I must try out this skiing, no? I will ski every mountain in the world by Christmas. The brunette behind the glass smiled a little condescendingly. A little early in the season, isn't it? Too early? Doubt Shaw. He waved his hand in dismissal. Who says so? Tosca patted his arm and said a few calming words of Spanish she'd learned for the clinic. She really hoped no one close enough to hear her soft words spoke Spanish or would recognize it wasn't Italian to match Bo's accent. The clerk's brows lifted, but she didn't respond to Bo's question. You've got a while to wait. The bus doesn't leave for a few hours. She quoted them a price, and Bo passed over the prepaid credit card he'd purchased at Walmart and loaded with cash. Looking at the way the young men were eyeing them, Tosca thought it was probably a good thing he didn't pull out a wad of cash instead. They presented the necessary ID and were issued their tickets. Bo led her to a quiet corner of the room to wait. Tosca yawned, exhausted, and whispered to him, You know it's too early to ski, right? She was totally smirking at you. Of course I know. I grew up there, didn't I? Bo whispered back in his normal voice. Tosca smothered a laugh. Go ahead and lean on me. One of us might as well sleep. Bo pulled her closer. It's not fair that you're letting me sleep. At least I slept a little in the car. There's no way I can sleep right now anyway. I'll let you stand guard when we're on the bus. How does that sound? Like you're a liar. You won't sleep on the bus either, will you? His tipped his head in acknowledgement. Probably not. He pulled her close and pressed a kiss into her temple. Sleepy, sleepy, cara mia, he declared loudly in his Italian persona again. She managed to hold in a giggle as she snuggled closer. If Bo thought it was safe for her to relax, she would trust him. He'd never led her astray yet.
Bo was tense. He'd picked the back corner of the depot for their spot because it was out of sight from anyone driving past on the street, or far enough out of sight that no one would be able to positively identify them. There was a back door nearby with an alarm on it. It was only to be used for emergencies. If they had to bolt, it would be an emergency, and it was out of the way so he wouldn't have to worry about foot traffic passing by them. He didn't want to have to worry about every person who walked by. Tosca took a deep breath and let out a sigh, a sign that she was nearly asleep already. Poor thing had been more tired than usual lately. He wondered if he was waking her with his nightmares and making it hard for her to fall asleep again. The hours passed as the hands on the depot clock slowly circled around and around. He looked at the ticket in his hand. They would make a transfer in Denver. Only an hour from his hometown. If he called Hank, even in the middle of the night, his twin would be at the depot, waiting to greet them. But that could put Hank at risk, so as much as he wanted to see his family again, he knew he couldn't do it. Tosca had been right that the separation had been harder than he expected, but he still couldn't regret going with her. Homesickness would pass. He'd felt it before, and he'd always dealt with it. A teen with funky hair looked their way, and Bo watched him right back. The kid's gaze skittered to something else. Bo was tempted to throw out some more familiar Italian phrases and be the gregarious traveler, excited about the journey. But he was bone-weary and didn't have the energy to carry it off properly, even if it wouldn't have risked waking Tosca. The clock ticked on. Bo watched a maroon sedan glide slowly past the bus depot minutes before their bus was supposed to arrive. The hair on the back of his neck rose and he shifted farther out of view. Finally, their bus was called. "Grazie, molto bene," Bo declared, then turned to Tosca. "Sweetheart, it's our turn now. Time to get on to booze, see? The ski slopes await." Tosca gave him a look of confused disbelief. "Come on, my sweet bambina, everyone is waiting for us." He gestured to the room around them. Tosca blinked a few times and looked around. She seemed to orient herself, nodding. "Si, bien." They gathered their things and he said a few more Italian phrases as they moved to the bus. "You must go ahead and find us seats, no?" he said, giving her a firm nudge toward the bus steps. He was a lot less noticeable as just himself if the car came back. Bo passed their duffels to the driver, searching his mind for all of the Italian he'd learned in movies. "What a glorious country you have here. So, bellissima." He didn't think that was exactly the word he wanted, but the driver's lips curved slightly. "You're more excited for a long ride than most of my passengers," he said. "That's because they have no thirst for adventure." He touched his fingers together on each hand, gesturing with them expansively and feeling like a fool. The car approached again and Bo headed up the steps. Tosca was already out of sight. "Mille grazie," he called, keeping his face averted and trying to act thrilled and carefree, but his shoulders itched. He joined Tosca, sliding into the seat beside hers. She looked pale and anxious. "Charles was in that car," she whispered. "I know. He didn't get a good look at me. He got a good listen to that acting job," she said. "That was the plan. I want everyone to remember the crazy Italiano and his quiet girlfriend who were going skiing because they were too stupid to know ski season hadn't started yet." She didn't look reassured, and kept the anxious look until they had been on the road for nearly an hour, at which point she fell back to sleep. Bo stared out the window. They had 12 hours to Denver, 12 hours during which nearly anything could happen, including Charles and his goon figuring out what had happened to them and following. They probably should have done something about their appearances, but covering Tosca's hair with the hood and his with his beanie was as good as he'd been able to do. Maybe they'd get lucky and be able to do something at the next stop. Jason had promised to set something up if he could, but as much as Bo wished he could be optimistic, he wasn't sure luck was on their side. 7. Though Bo and Tosca were able to get off the bus a few times for bathroom breaks and to grab a bite to eat when they'd grown sick of the snacks they'd packed, that was about it. Mostly, they just rode from bus depot to bus depot. Bo took note of everyone who was on the trip, who had heard him in the depot in Billings, paying attention when they departed the bus at their stops. There was still a mother with a baby on the bus when they reached Denver. He hoped she was continuing on and not transferring to the same bus they would be on. That would complicate the changes he had planned. They only had 45 minutes in Denver to get off the bus, eat a real meal, and hopefully handle a couple of other issues. "Golden Arches," Bo whispered to Tosca when the bus came to a stop. It was only a block away, just like Jason had texted him it would be. Grazie, mile bene," Bo said as he collected the bags, and he and Tosca hurried down the sidewalk to the McDonald's. When they walked in, Tosca made a beeline for the bathroom, and Bo sat at a nearby booth, digging through the bags. It was daytime, so the weather wasn't as cold as when they left, and it should be warmer in Kansas City than in Billings. He traded out his heavy coat for an old jean jacket he'd owned since high school, and pulled out a pink sweater for Tosca. She came out of the bathroom and checked out the menu, then sat with their things while he ordered. "What's with the clothes? Decide we were carrying too many?" she asked when he brought their food. "No, it's time for a change. We're making a few switches while we're here in town." "You're changing my clothes? Okay." She looked curious, and a little like she wasn't sure how she felt about that. "Among other things." He left the message cryptic and focused on eating. They wouldn't have much time to get back to the depot and buy new tickets. He checked his watch and looked out the window, wondering where his contact was. His food was nearly gone when he saw a familiar blond man step out of a blue SUV. Bo waited for him to come into the restaurant, then put up a hand to get his attention. "Killer, I was starting to wonder if you were coming. You know me, I always come through for a pal." Killer pulled an envelope out of his pocket and passed it over. "I called your place looking for you a few weeks ago. Talked to your mom." "Oh, how is she doing?" Bo couldn't help but ask while he opened the envelope. "She seemed to be doing well. She mentioned your twin is engaged, your sister's having another baby, and she said you were back in the service, somewhere super secret." He looked at their things piled on the floor. "I guess that's not exactly true." "No, she knows it's not, but..." Bo smiled when he saw the fake IDs his army buddy had procured for them on such short notice, then stopped to stare. "Dude, what's with the butch haircut for me? I thought it suited you. You'll look good bald." He turned to Tosca. "Don't you think so, sweetheart?" "Sorry, I'm such an idiot. Meet my wife." Bo hesitated, not sure if he should tell his friend her real name. "Tosca, honey, this is Killer, also known as Randy Killian. He's another army buddy." "Tosca, it's good to meet you. Sorry about the photo. Apparently you used to have really bright hair." He gestured to the ID, which had Tosca's face on it, but definitely not her hair, which was fire engine red in the picture. "Luckily I came prepared." He pulled out a can of red hairspray, the kind people bought for their Halloween costumes. He also brought out some dark foundation makeup, at least 4 shades darker than her real color to match her skin color in the photo. "I tweaked the pictures Jason sent me. Perfect." Bo looked at the name on his ID, then at hers, then took a double take at his again. "Wait, are you kidding me? James and Stacy Dean? James Dean?" he hissed. Killer chuckled. "Because you're such a pretty boy and you think you're all that." "I may owe you something completely different than I thought, like a good pounding." Bo wasn't sure if he was kidding or not. Killer laughed louder. Tosca took a look at her ID and shook her head. "You want me to color my hair?" "It'll wash out," Bo promised. "I used this stuff in high school. Hank and I went to a Halloween party as Thing 1 and Thing 2. Carissa seemed to think it was fitting." He shrugged, trying to make light of it. "Go figure." She pursed her lips and took the can, turning it to read the label, but she still looked a little disgruntled. "Fine, I'll give it a try. If it doesn't come out, you're going to be in big trouble." She poked him in the arm. "You're a trooper." Bo put an arm around her shoulders and turned back to Killer. "Stupid name aside, I appreciate it, man. We really needed this." He gestured with the ID he held. "Anything for you, you know that." Bo finished the last bite of his sandwich. "We need to get her dolled up and get back to the bus." "Dolled up." Tosca shot Bo a dirty look, then turned to Killer, smiling sweetly. "Did you pack a razor for his hair?" "It is getting awfully long. I've never seen it when it wasn't military cut before," Killer said. "He's definitely a pretty boy." "I'll show you a pretty boy." Bo brandished a fist for a few seconds before standing to give his friend a hug. "It was good to see you. If you wouldn't mind dropping my mom a line and telling her I'm well, I'd appreciate it. Probably not for a few days, though, and tell Hank and Carissa congrats." There was a lump in his chest when he thought of everything that was happening without him around to see it. "No problem. Take care of yourself. And call me if you get a chance. I want to know how you and Stacy here are doing." He winked at her. Tosca smiled. "This must seem weird to you." "Yeah, but I'm kind of used to Bo being weird." Killer put his hands back in his pockets and sauntered out of the restaurant. "You know some interesting people." Tosca said as she pulled her hair back in ponytail. It was too short for a braid. That I do. Give me a minute with the makeup. She took it into the bathroom to apply. Beau tossed the empty food wrappers, and they took their things out to the back lot, where he sprayed her hair with the red spray. She slid her pink sweater on, and then wrapped his supposedly bald head with a do-rag. Beau glanced at his watch. We better get moving, or we won't get tickets on time. They walked into the terminal with 10 minutes to spare. Dude, he said loudly as they walked in. That was the gnarliest mountain biking I've had, like ever. He did his best impression of a surfer dude. We totally have to do that again? Maybe next year, you think? He turned back to grin brightly at Tosca, who looked like she wished she weren't in his company. He smiled back at the man behind the window. 2 tickets to Kansas City. I wonder if we'll see some tornadoes while we're there. He looked at Tosca again, doing his best to channel Ted Theodore Logan. Not likely. Bummer. He passed over some cash for the tickets this time, having pulled it out of his wallet in advance so he wouldn't have to worry about flashing it in the bus depot. They're loading your bus now, the man said as he passed back the tickets and IDs. Best hurry. Thanks. Tosca followed him out the door to the terminal. She leaned over and hissed, If you start playing air guitar, I'm divorcing you. Beau laughed. Who would confuse idiotic surfer guy James for Italian stallion Adam? Not that the lady at the counter probably bought my act in Billings. What self-respecting Italian would be named Adam? He adjusted the bags over his shoulder, wishing he could reach for her hand, but that would have to wait. The bus driver was very slow at getting everything and everyone loaded onto the bus. Beau made appropriate comments as his mentor would have, if this really were Bill and Ted's excellent adventure. Please try to get some sleep, Tosca suggested when they were seated. Anything to prevent more of that nonsense. Beau grinned, sliding his hand onto her neck and pulling her close. I have a better idea for how to keep my mouth shut, he whispered to her. We're in public, so we'll keep it short, I guess. He lowered his head and kissed her. Her skin was soft under his fingers, her mouth pliant and inviting. He ran his thumb down the column of her neck and finally pulled back. A kiss was one thing, a public show was something else entirely. I always did have a thing for redheads, she snorted. I love you, Mrs. James Dean, he teased. I love you too, Mr. James Dean. The bus pulled out and Beau relaxed back against the seat. There were nearly 12 hours to go before they reached Kansas City. He couldn't wait to see Jason again and to shed the impersonations. It was so much more draining than being himself.
8. It was still dark when the bus finally arrived in Kansas City the next morning. Tosca was nervous about meeting Jason. What would he think? What would he do when he had all of the information? How long would they be there before they continued on anyway? Would she like it enough to stay? She kept watching out the window, expecting to see that maroon sedan again, expecting to see Charles every time they stopped at a depot, hiding behind a car to take her out. Tosca looked at Beau, who was finally sleeping a little after nearly 2 days of being awake. She often marveled as she watched him sleep that he could look so calm and peaceful when he wasn't in the throes of one of his nightmares. The bus driver got on the speaker and announced they were pulling into the station. Beau sucked in a surprised breath, sitting up in the seat and looking around them, taking stock. Shh, it's okay, she said. We're here. He blinked a couple of times and smiled at her, that casual all's well smile that hid what was really going on inside him. It had taken her a while to see past the facade, but she knew it well enough now. Great, do we have everything together? He asked. Yes. The bus stopped and he stood to remove their smaller luggage from the racks above them. He handed over a couple of them and then looked out the window, studying the crowd with a wary eye. He nodded. I see Jason. Follow me out so I can make sure everything's clear, he said in a low voice. Louder and far more jovially, he called out, Dude, there's a total lack of mountains here. Tosca managed not to roll her eyes and really hoped the persona was only for the bus ride and he'd drop it as soon as they met up with Jason. It had been a long 12 hours of listening to the occasional idiotic exclamation and accompanying braying laugh. She stood and prepared to follow him out. Not that she could go first if he didn't let her. He sat on the aisle, protecting her from the rest of the riders, she figured. At the base of the stairs, Bo stopped and took a hearty breath, looking around him with a wide smile. Nice place. I can't wait to meet your dad. Did he really ride that wave in Malibu? Apparently satisfied that the area was safe for the moment, he stepped out of the way and waited for her to come down, throwing his left arm around her shoulder. The move was calculated to look casual, but she knew it was really intended to protect and shield her as he kept himself between her and the street. A dark-haired man who was a little taller than Bo approached them. Hi, how's it going? Bo stopped to shake his hand. Thanks for coming for us. Give us a hand with the bags? Jason's brow lowered a little, but it was the only giveaway that he'd expected a somewhat different reception. Sure, which ones? Bo led him over and they each shouldered one of the bags. Bo didn't release Tosca for a moment and kept his body between her and most of the crowd. How's life been treating you? He asked in the same jovial voice. Good, work's steady. Jason stopped at a car and popped the trunk. A few minutes later, Tosca was seated in the back, surrounded by tinted windows, and Bo sat up front with Jason. Sorry about the odd hello, Bo said in a normal voice. This is my wife, Tosca. Tosca, one of my buddies from the army, Jason. Tosca and Jason shook hands over the back of the seat. I've been wondering what kind of woman would take him on as a project. Jason's eyes twinkled. Is that your normal color? Not even close, she said. He claims it will wash out. Jason grinned as he put the car in gear. It's pretty fetching either way, I'm sure. It's good to meet you. I'm curious about what's going on, but you can fill me in when we get to my place. I'm across town a little bit in Crystal Creek. I have a home I'm fixing up, so it's not in terrific condition, but there's a spare room that's already been brought up to code. You should be reasonably comfortable. Jason informed them that the house was a cool old place from the late 1800s. 2 stories with peeling paint on the siding and on the gingerbread around the big front porch. The lot was small, but that was typical for the neighborhood, and it only had a 1-car garage. As I said, it needs work. Jason's words were a little apologetic as they pulled into the drive. I bought it in the spring and it was thrashed. It has great bones. No problem. Thanks for putting us up on such short notice, Bo said. And for arranging things with Killer for the IDs. I'd rather not be traced right now. So I gathered, I'll want some deets when we get you settled. They collected the bags and went into the house. Tosca would have been impressed by the big space with the enormous cupboards and a huge island in the middle, if it hadn't been barely habitable. Some of the cupboards had doors, and other didn't. The floor was covered with ripped, ancient linoleum, probably from the 50s, and the formica on the countertops had been worn down to the point that there was only a little hint of the original color here and there. It's going to be a great space when you've redone it, Tosca said diplomatically. Jason looked confused. I thought the kitchen was fine as it is. I wasn't going to do anything with it. She stared at him for a moment, trying to decide if he was serious or pulling her leg. Bo laughed. Be nice. She doesn't know you well enough for that yet. Sorry, Jason said with a smile. Yes, this is coming up on the to-do list. I started with the room you're in, was then moved in while I worked on the master. Now it's under control and I'm working from room to room. Only one of the bathrooms is operational right now, but it'll be fine. Come on through and excuse the mess. He wasn't kidding about the mess, but Tosca ignored it. Renovations weren't pretty things. The room he took them to, on the 2nd floor, on the other hand, was pretty. It held a queen bed, an oak chest of drawers, and a pretty mint green comforter and window coverings. A rag rug covered part of the oak floor. It's nice. Did you decorate it? She asked. No, my sister Maddie insisted I needed at least one room in the house where women would be comfortable, so she dragged me to the store when I bought furniture and stuff. I'm sure you'll meet her before long. She tends to be nosy about my guests. Jason opened the closet door and set the first duffel in it. I'll be downstairs clearing a little space in the dining room. You guys eat already, or should I whip up some eggs and bacon? Breakfast sounds great, and eggs and bacon will work for us, Bo said. Okay, go ahead and clean up or whatever. Jason gestured to the bath again. I know riding in a bus for that long sucks. There are clean towels in the bathroom across the hall if you want a shower. Jason went back downstairs, whistling. Bo closed the door and asked Tosca, "You okay with this?" "Yes, of course. Thanks. He seems nice." Tosca zipped open one of the duffels. "I need a shower. If nothing else, to wash the red out of my hair and this foundation off my skin before I break out." Bo leaned over and kissed her. "Take as long as you like." "Oh, I will." Tosca found something to change into and moved into the bathroom. It also had beautiful oak floors with a soft, fluffy floor mat, a new toilet, tub, and a white counter along with new fixtures. It was lovely. She sighed a little in appreciation and stripped down for the shower. When she emerged a while later, Bo stood in the hall watching the bathroom doorway. "Feel better?" he asked. "So much. You want a turn?" "Definitely." He touched her cheek. "It's good to see your peaches and cream complexion again. It just wasn't right with all that gunk on your face." "It's your fault." "True enough." He moved into the bathroom and she returned to the bedroom to put on some fresh makeup. Looking at herself in the mirror, the few times they had stopped overnight had been weird with all of the gunk on her face. This was definitely better. There hadn't been a blow dryer in the bathroom, and she hadn't thought to pack theirs, so she combed her hair and clipped it back on the sides for now, moisturized, worked on her eye makeup, and dusted everything with a little translucent powder. It was nice to feel human again. Even if she was planning on sleeping half the day after breakfast. She was finished before Bo returned to their room. "Now, that's the woman I fell in love with," Bo said in greeting. "Just keep saying that," she said as she stood, feeling a little queasy. Was it the exhaustion and uncertainty, or was this morning's sickness? They went down to join Jason for breakfast. He was just plating up scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and pouring a large pot of coffee. "Have a seat. The food's ready." Bo pulled out a seat for Tosca, and she slid into it, feeling self-conscious. She wasn't sure how much Bo planned to tell Jason, or if she was comfortable with a stranger knowing her business. It hadn't exactly been a recipe for success in the past. "So the deets, or at least the general layout?" Jason asked when everyone's plates were full. Bo looked at Tosca, then back at his friend. About a year ago, Tosca was put in witness protection. She moved out to Juniper Ridge, where we met. In July, the guy she's supposed to testify against found her. We married and were moved to a new location. It seems that he found her again. I don't know how he found us in Montana, but when we were getting on the bus in Billings, he drove right past us. Tosca felt her lungs tighten and her stomach churn at the thought. "I don't think he saw me, but I definitely saw him." Bo nodded. "Obviously, there's a leak of some kind in the U.S. Marshals' office, so I decided we needed to go off-grid for a while. The court case is in a little over a month, and I didn't want to risk relying on anyone they would have reason to connect me to right away." "Oh, so that's why you've maintained radio silence for the past year and a half?" Jason asked. "So you'd have somewhere to run if you needed a hidey hole?" Bo's lips twitched. "Yeah, that was it exactly." Jason took another bite of eggs and asked, "When the court case is over and he's in jail for whatever it is he did, will you guys be safe and go back to Colorado?" "Can't." Bo's lips pursed a little. "As long as the guy's alive, she won't be safe. He's got a revenge thing going on and a few too many contacts for my comfort." "That's rough. So you looking to settle down?" Jason asked. Bo looked at Tosca and she looked back. "We haven't had time to think about long-term plans yet, but we'll have to eventually," she said. "If we like this area, we could find a place around here, but I'm not sure if we'll be safe to come back after the court case." "Well, you're welcome to stay here as long as you like. I've got the space." Jason turned to Bo. "I'm running a framing crew, working construction. We're getting behind with some jobs for the construction company I work with most of the time. I could use an extra guy to pound nails. It's not much, but it'll be something while you figure out what you want." "That's very generous," Tosca said noncommittally. Jason shook his head. "Bo saved my life more than once. I'm happy to have some way to repay him. You're probably too tired to make any decisions right now. Get some sleep, talk about it, and figure out what you want to do. I'm usually pretty laid back on Sundays. I'll keep the noise level down so you can get some sleep. You both look done in. We can get into more specifics tonight." Thanks. We appreciate it, Bo said. Hey, I got your back. Jason stood, moving to put his plate in the sink. How does that nap sound? Bo asked Tosca. Heavenly, I'm practically falling asleep sitting up now. Same here. Tosca didn't know what to think, but she was glad to be able to zone out on a soft horizontal surface for a while. She'd worry about the next step later. Bo and Tosca used the first day at Jason's to recover from the trip and discuss their options. One of the main issues was how to present themselves in public. After some debate, they decided to go by Bo and Tosca for now, and Jason suggested that they hold back on paying taxes and SSI to the government until after the court case, when they would know what identities they wanted to use for filing. They could officially be listed under whatever identity the government thought best at the time. The three of them also decided Tosca should meet as few people as possible for a while until they made a firmer decision about their names. With those reassurances, Bo and Tosca decided to give it a few weeks in the new location, so Bo went to work with Jason the next morning. The men were up and gone before Tosca rose for the morning, leaving her at the house by herself all day, which she was grateful for as she began experiencing morning sickness with a vengeance. It was after 9 before her stomach settled enough for her to rise. She showered, ate, and then wondered what to do next. Surely there had to be more for her life than sitting around the house all day. Not being allowed to go out in public would keep Tosca safer, but it also meant she couldn't explore the shops, pick up groceries, or get a job. Bored, she found the cleaning supplies and did a thorough cleaning, starting in the living room. The room had been gutted, but still had bits of carpeting and wallpaper strewn across the floors, and the windows had their stickers, showing they were new. Tuesday, she found some window cleaner and scrubbed all of the windows in the public areas of the house, inside and out. She wore a hat to cover her hair and a baggy sweatshirt to hide her figure. Jason's house was in an older, quiet neighborhood, so she felt reasonably safe in his yard. Over the next few days, she scrubbed walls and door trim, cleaned bugs out of the light fixtures, and after searching for a while, found Jason's stash of new light bulbs and replaced the burned-out ones. She listened to shows online while she worked and tried not to think about why she wasn't living in their cozy cabin in Montana. Wow, you've done a lot of cleaning, Bo said when they came home for dinner on Friday evening. Some, she demurred. The parts that weren't under construction had been reasonably clean, but there had still been plenty to do. Not some, Jason said, looking around. A lot. You didn't have to, but I appreciate it. I can't sit on my thumbs all day, Tosca said. I need something to do, or I'll go crazy. How are you at painting? He asked. She thought about the baby. Should she be painting while pregnant? She would have to do a check online. She hadn't told Bo about the baby yet, but she hadn't gotten an official test done either. Of course, the morning sickness which had hit her every morning since their arrival had been proof enough for her. I haven't really done any painting before. I could do something about curtains for the living room if you could get some fabric, though. And a sewing machine. I don't have one, but my mom did, and I used it fairly often when I was in high school. I can borrow one. Jason pulled out his phone and clicked a few buttons, then lifted it to his ear. Hey, you wanted to do some more decorating over here, didn't you? Yeah, I have someone who said she'd help out with the manual stuff, but we'll need a sewing machine and whatever else. His hand flapped a little, like he wasn't sure what all he would need. Bo came over to Tosca. I'm glad you could find something to keep you busy. You sure this is what you want to do? A little sewing would be fun, Tosca answered. And that sofa is so comfortable. It just needs a new cover, don't you think? She pointed to an old-fashioned sofa with glossy cherry wood and threadbare upholstery. Her mom had been a pro at putting new upholstery on furniture, and Tosca was excited to give the sofa new life. If you say so. He shrugged a little. You up for trying your hand at painting? Maybe not right away. We'll see. After I do some research. There are a lot of other little jobs I could do around here, though. She could see the living room in her mind's eye. The hardwood floors needed to be patched, sanded, and sealed. The walls could use a little spackle and a coat of paint. The window shades and new upholstery could make it a nice place. Unfortunately, the kitchen needed a complete overhaul, so she'd leave that alone and focus on the things she could do. Jason hung up. That was my sister. I'll order some pizza, and she'll be over in half an hour to join us for dinner. I think the two of you will get along just fine, he told Tosca before clicking back to his phone to order the food. Sounds like a plan, Bo said, heading toward the stairs. I'm going to shower. Tosca followed him up the stairs and to the room. Bo showered, then joined Tosca in their room. She had never spent much time watching Bo get ready in the morning. They were married one day, and he was put to work the next. Why would they need a honeymoon? They had been married 3 years already, according to the paperwork. It was nice that Jason knew the truth. Are you sure you're enjoying cleaning up here? Bo asked. You look a little pale. I know things have been changing really fast. I hope you're not wearing yourself out. I'm fine. She was a little nauseated, actually, and hoped she could eat the pizza without wanting to puke. Was this pregnancy sickness or something else? She'd taken an afternoon nap, and that had helped with the tiredness that had plagued her for hours. I might have other thoughts about long-term employment, but this is okay for now. It's nice to see everything looking better in the living room anyway. She'd love to own and renovate an old home like this someday. Bo rubbed his hand over the scruff on his chin. He hadn't shaved since they left Montana. Then he added a touch of aftershave. It looked really nice, which surprised her because she'd never been partial to facial hair. Are you growing a winter beard to keep warmer, or are you creating a better disguise for yourself? She asked. A little of both. He turned to her, walking toward where she was propped up against the headboard with pillows. Do you mind a man with a beard? She tipped her head and reached out to brush a palm across his cheek. I like the way it looks. I guess we'll see how I feel in a couple more weeks. You're pretty scratchy right now. Too scratchy to kiss? He asked, leaning forward. I can't imagine that ever happening, she said, meeting him halfway. His kiss was soft, gentle, and teasing. He slid one hand into her hair, curling it around the base of her skull, and the moment stretched through time until the slamming of the door downstairs had him drawing back. That's probably Jason's sister. You up for meeting someone new? A chance at feminine conversation? You bet. Tosca touched her hair. I guess I look okay? You look beautiful, as always. He helped her stand and ran his hands down her arms. I love you, Tosca. Margot. He whispered her real name softly, lovingly, as if to say he knew who she was and accepted all of her. I love you too, Robert. She rarely used his full name, opting for the nickname he'd grown up with. She considered telling him about the baby, but as she searched for the right words, there was a knock at their door. Hey. Jason called to them. Maddie is here. The pizza too. Prosody when you're finished in there. No problem. We'll be right out. Bo waited a moment and lowered his voice. He probably thinks we're up here making out or something. Well, that's just silly. Why would we be doing that? Tosca asked, then leaned in and pressed her lips to his for a long moment before pulling away. Dinner calls. Good, I'm starving. Jason stood in the kitchen with 3 women, not just the one Tosca had expected. He looked up when they came into the room. Sorry, I didn't realize my sister would bring her whole crew with her. The 3 women were a little intimidating, a redhead, a blonde, and a brunette. They looked completely different from each other, but they held a quality of oneness that Tosca envied. Plus, she looked a little like a frump after a day of cleaning, and they were all well put together. Bo came up behind Tosca and rested a hand in the middle of her back. Sounds like you have a lot more plans to make than we expected. Nothing wrong with that, the brunette said. Since my rude brother didn't introduce us, let me. I'm Maddie. These are my best friends, Adeline, she gestured to the blonde, and Piper, she gestured to the redhead. I'm Bo, and this is my wife, Tosca. I served with your brother in the army. I know your name and your face, Maddie said. He talked about you a few times. It's good to meet you. Then she smiled at Tosca. I figured if we were going to redecorate Jason's place, we might as well get serious about it. She gestured to a stack of decorating magazines that sat on the kitchen counter. You are not turning this place into a girly paradise, Jason said, suddenly looking nervous. I still have to live here. Don't worry, Adeline said. You won't feel out of place in your own home. I think we know you well enough to make you happy. She patted him on the shoulder and opened the top box of pizza. "Let's eat. Then we can get to work." Tosca hung back a little while the others got their food, watching them interact, trying to gauge if the welcome was as genuine as it looked or if Jason's sister would see her as an interloper. When they were seated around the kitchen table, Maddie started asking questions about Bo and Tosca. They kept the answers as general as they could, but the woman would not give up easily. "Jason said you've only been married a few months. How did you meet?" Tosca smiled. "I worked at a clinic. He came in for treatments for a skin disease he picked up in the Middle East." She shot him a teasing look. "He wouldn't stop asking me out until I said yes. He was very persistent." Bo grinned and slid a hand over hers on the table. "What can I say? I know a good thing when I see it." "I liked him right off," Tosca admitted. "But I wasn't going to date anyone anytime soon. He got under my skin, though, like a tick." "Hey," he poked her in the ribs, making her laugh. "So, what is it that you do?" Tosca asked, wanting to change the subject. Maddie eagerly started talking about the class she taught in the neighborhood elementary school. When the food was gone, the girls shooed the guys into the other room and broke out the decorating magazines. "I was thinking of something like this," Maddie said, pointing to a picture of a sparkling kitchen with open shelves and light bouncing from every surface. "Only not in pumpkin. He'd hate that." "Slate blue," Adeline said, "or maybe a gray-green." "Exactly. And the cupboards are totally doable if he repaints them and gets all new doors and redoes the countertops." Maddie started a list. Tosca grabbed a magazine and pulled it toward her, then stopped and stared at a gardening magazine underneath. "Are we talking about landscaping the yard tonight, too?" she asked. "No," Piper said. "I'm working on putting together a community garden near the school. This is research. I have a ton of ideas." "That sounds terrific. Do you have a site for it?" Piper's lips twisted a little. "I just found out who owns the property. We'll see if he can be convinced to let us use it or not. We might have to look at alternate locations." She did not look pleased about the fact. Back to the renovations, though. Tosca let it go, wondering who owned the property. The talk continued on, and Tosca found herself making suggestions and laughing with the others. It had been so long since she'd had female friends. She wasn't sure how long she would be staying, but even if it wasn't going to be forever, it was nice to have someone to talk with. She only wished she could tell them more about herself. She thought about Jokel, who was engaged to Beau's twin in Colorado, and his sister Carissa. She hoped she would get to see them again someday.
Charles had spent most of the week trying to get answers about where Robert and Margot went. He was sure they got on one of the buses in Billings. There weren't a lot of other options, and his contact in the U.S. Marshals office had verified that they hadn't hopped a plane. Bribing the clerk for information about whom he'd sold the tickets to had been surprisingly easy. The fact that the man traveling with Margot had pretended to be Italian had thrown him for a while, but with a little work to verify, Charles was now fairly sure it was Robert. When he found out they got off in Denver, he thought maybe they'd headed home. It was only an hour to where Margot had lived before. She hadn't been that stupid, unfortunately, and he wasted a couple of days making sure they really weren't hiding out on the farm or somewhere nearby. Back in his office in Atlanta, he paced, waiting for the call from his investigator verifying whether or not the couple had gotten on another bus to another location or if they'd hopped a plane in Denver. The phone rang and he pounced on it. "You better have good news for me." "The best." "I showed their pictures to the clerk in Denver. He said he thought he saw a couple that looked kind of like them." Robert was loud and a little obnoxious, but not pretending to be Italian this time. He was one of those idiot surfer types instead. And they used different names. They bought tickets for Kansas City. And the clerk? Won't be talking to anyone else. Ever. He was a lot harder to get information from than the last one. Charles nodded to himself, glad that complication was out of the way. He'd long since stopped regretting the death of strangers. So the question is where they went next. Or are they still in Kansas City? "I'm heading there now, boss. When I have some information for you, I'll let you know." Charles smiled and sat in the large leather chair behind the desk. The court case was only 3 weeks away. He needed to get Margot out of the way before that. but he wasn't letting someone else mess this up. He'd take care of her himself this time.
10 Halloween came and went. Bo was adjusting well to his new job and liked living with Jason, but he thought he and Tosca could stand to get their own place soon. They'd spent a lot of their stash to get to Kansas City, though, so he needed a couple of paychecks before they could afford a down payment. He wished he dared access their money, but he'd have to wait until they were in Atlanta for the court case in a couple of weeks. He didn't want anyone tracking them to Crystal Creek through a bank withdrawal. "You about ready to go for the night?" Jason asked, coming up behind him. Bo shot a couple more nails into the chipboard he'd been putting down for subfloor in the house where they were working. "I'm done here. You ready to see what the girls have done to your living room?" Tosca had been prepping to paint for the past few days and filled in the trim, but the color was coming that day. Maddie had half a day off work, and Adeline had gotten off work early to help as well. "Sure, where's the bad here? If I hate it, Maddie said she'd make dinner for us for a week and repaint it." He looked a little cocky, like he thought he was getting a free dinner for sure. "If you do like it, you have to buy dinner for everyone, though. Is your wallet up to that?" Bo teased. "Bring it on. You're braver than I am, letting them have their way with this project." Bo thought Tosca had great taste in furnishings, but he'd seen a couple of the decorator magazines the other three women had brought in with them, and words like pumpkin and frosted velvet had floated into the room where he and Jason had been watching a game. That made him wonder what they had in mind. "Maybe," Jason nodded, his expression a little wry. "It wouldn't be the first time I've made a mistake when it came to a woman." Bo stared at Jason, wondering what the cryptic comment was about, but didn't ask. If Jason wanted to talk about it, he would have said more. It was raining steadily, and traffic on the drive home was heavier than usual and a little dangerous. Jason may have said he wasn't worried about the house, but the closer they got, the more he hunched over and his face tightened. He took the final corner into his neighborhood and frowned. "That green car is still sitting in front of the neighbor's house." He pointed it out. "Maybe someone bought a new car," Bo said, studying the vehicle. It had been there the previous evening, but not in exactly the same spot. He was glad Jason knew all of the vehicles that belonged in the neighborhood, but it meant he was probably jumping at shadows, watching for things to go wrong. Jason parked in the garage and they entered the kitchen doorway into the house, which smelled strongly of paint, despite the two windows that were wide open. A chorus of feminine laughter greeted them, and Bo smiled. He hadn't heard enough of that sound from Tosca lately. He liked the area and thought he could settle down there happily, so he was pleased Tosca seemed to be making friends. "Sounds like someone is having a party," Jason called. "Come in and join us," a woman's voice invited. They came around the corner and Jason's step hitched slightly. Then he continued into the entry, which had soft cream-colored trim and bold burgundy walls on two sides, with tan on the opposite side. Through the door, the living room was 3 shades of blue ranging from baby blue to medium blue. Hints of cream around the doors and windows made a great contrast. Curtains hung over the windows, offering privacy without being too feminine for a man's comfort. A swatch of coordinating fabric lay over the sofa. Jason stopped and stared. "Wow! Wow good or wow bad?" Maddie bit her lip as she watched her older brother. "Wow good. It looks terrific. Not at all what I was thinking of, but I like it." He walked into the living room and turned to study the walls. Better than I expected, actually. "Adeline and I spent an hour on Saturday looking at fabric before we settled on this." Tosca gestured to the window. "I thought I better get your reaction before I covered the sofa to match." He touched the blue and cream-striped pocket curtains, brushing them to the side and looking at the simple rail they hung on. "I like it. It's really nice. So's the other stuff." He gestured to the swatch lying on the sofa. Bo walked over and pulled Tosca close, kissing her hello. "I think it's a hit." "Do you like it?" she asked in a soft voice. He smiled at her. "It's great. You have a talent." She beamed. "I wasn't sure how the curtains would go. It's been so long since I used a sewing machine." "She's really good with it," Adeline said. Bo watched Jason move around the spaces, looking at them from different angles. Do you really like it? Adeline asked. You did really well, and I can't believe you finished all of the painting today. Jason reached out and pulled at something in Adeline's hair, his face softening a little. His face fell when she obliviously turned away to talk to Piper. Ah, is she what the comment was about? Bo smiled and focused back on his wife. Someday we're actually going to have a place of our own, and you'll get to work on it. I can't wait. She kissed him softly, pleasure filling her face. Okay, enough with the mushy stuff, Jason said. I promised if the paint looked good that I'd take everyone to dinner for a change. If you want to comb your hair or whatever, now's the time. I'm going to take a quick shower. He headed for the stairs. Ditto. Bo released Tosca and followed Jason.
Tosca had taken advantage of her liberation from the house with Adeline a couple of days earlier to pick up an early pregnancy test. She'd told Adeline she was just running in for mouthwash, which they did need, so Adeline let her go in alone, allowing her to buy the test without anyone watching over her shoulder. She'd finally gotten up the nerve to take the test after the guys went to work that morning. She hadn't known if she wanted to be pregnant this soon, but over the past couple of weeks had found herself making plans for her child, imagining what it would be like to hold him or her in her arms. So when Bo went into the shower, she followed him up and pulled the test package out of its hiding place, setting it on the dresser where he couldn't miss it, or the positive test result. Then she leaned back against the headboard, as she so often did when he came in from his evening shower. She held his pillow to her stomach, nervous and anxious about telling him. Would he be excited, or would he be shocked and not know what to think? She wished they were really alone, that she could have him to herself for the evening. But celebrating with friends was a decent second option, whether the others found out about the pregnancy tonight or not. She bit her lip when he walked into the room wearing the robe she'd bought him in Montana. "What?" he asked after looking back at her again. She lifted her brows at him. "You have an expression that tells me you want to say something." She shrugged, wanting him to see the package before she said anything about it. He gave her a searching look, then moved to the closet to get dressed. Anxiety knotted in her stomach as she waited, not so patiently, for him to turn back to the dresser to comb his hair in the mirror. What if he wasn't happy about the baby? What if the timing was all wrong? She'd worried about it before, but now the nerves seemed to attack her all at once. He came out in a flannel shirt the color of the sea on a cloudy day and rubbed a hand over his beard, which had come in darker than the hair on his head and was getting pretty thick now. "Is something wrong?" he asked. "Usually you're a chatty Cathy when I get home. Did you have fun with the girls today?" "Yes, it was good. They're really nice. They make me miss Jokel and your sister." "I miss them too." His voice was a little gruff. He turned to the dresser, then stopped and stared at the box and test stick. He picked up the stick, then stared at the picture on the back of the box that explained 2 lines meant pregnant. "Are you?" He turned to face her, hope and uncertainty in his face. "Are we having a baby?" Tosca smiled, relieved at the happiness in his expression. "Yes." "How far along are you? When is it due?" He set down the test stick and walked to the edge of the bed, his mouth slightly open in surprise. "I think I'm right around 8 weeks. She bit her lip a little. "I didn't know for sure until this morning, but I've suspected it for a while." He laughed loudly and scooped her off the bed, holding her close and twirling her. "I can't believe it. I wanted kids soon, but I know we talked about waiting until after the court case was settled." "I guess it's going to be a little sooner than we planned," she said. "You don't mind?" "How could I mind?" He stopped turning and touched his forehead to hers, still holding her so her toes barely touched the floor. "I love you, Sarah, Tosca, Margot Carver." He kissed her, then kissed her again, and again. "Hey, lovebirds, we want to leave sometime tonight." Jason's voice echoed up from the main floor. Bo smiled as he kissed Tosca one last time. "I still need to comb my hair. If you stay up here, it might take a long time. Maybe you should go down first?" She couldn't stop smiling. She felt so relieved that he was happy about the baby. No twisted emotions about it. "That's probably true." She slipped into a nicer pair of shoes and headed downstairs. "Where's Bo?" Jason asked when she reached the bottom. "Combing his hair. He'll be right down." "He's combing his hair. And what were you guys doing when he was supposed to be combing it before? He heaved a dramatic sigh. I swear, you're like Newlyweds or something. Tosca blushed. We were talking and stuff. And stuff? Maddie teased. Leave off. Pregnant women deserve some consideration, Bo said as he came down the stairs behind Tosca. What? You're pregnant? Maddie grinned and threw her arms around Tosca. Congratulations, I'm so excited for you. The others took turns giving hugs and expressing how pleased they were. It felt like Bo and Tosca belonged there. When they walked out to Maddie's car to ride to the steakhouse, the last thing on their minds was the green car parked across the street.
Found them, boss. Charles smiled over his glass of wine. Are you sure? I tracked them to an old army buddy of Robert's. I've been watching the house for more than a day, but I know I saw her leaving with a bunch of others. Looks like she's home alone most of the time, so it shouldn't be hard to take care of her. I just emailed photos. Charles checked his email and looked at the pictures the man had sent. That was Margot, all right, looking all too pleased with herself. He'd fix that. Perfect. I'll be there tomorrow morning. Send me your report and get out of there. A cashier's check will be waiting in your post box when you get back here. Charles hung up and sat back in his comfy chair. A celebratory dinner sounded just right to him.
11 Tosca rose later than usual the morning after the painting party and pregnancy celebration. The morning sickness was worse than usual, but she was still running high off the joy from the previous night, which made it more bearable. She wanted to get started on recovering the sofa before it got any later. Maddie had brought the rest of the supplies Tosca would need to do the job, and the bucket with the assorted screwdrivers, hammers, wrenches, and other tools Jason owned sat in the living room waiting for her to take on the job. Jason had offered to pay Tosca for her work, and she was going to take it, though she would have happily done it for free. She found a lot of satisfaction in doing the work, in seeing things come together, and understood better what Jokel must have felt as she tackled the renovations on her big old home in Juniper Ridge. When she did emerge from her room, she showered and prepared for the day. Her roots were growing out, and she stood in front of the mirror for a while, trying to decide whether to keep the strawberry blonde or to revert to her natural color. Or maybe it would be fun to do something completely different. Maybe she'd talk to the girls about it. She grinned at the thought that they were really her friends now. She didn't know how long she would be staying, but she would take what she could get while she was there. If they couldn't be back in Juniper Ridge, she would take this safe haven for as long as she could and enjoy it. The door downstairs opened and closed, and she smiled, hoping it was Bo, home for lunch. He'd managed it a few days earlier. "Hey, I didn't expect either of you home yet," she called as she came down the stairs. "I don't think you expected me at all," Charles said from the foyer. A flash of silver in his hand caught her eye. He had a gun. Tosca froze and stared at him, the air whooshing from her lungs as terror gripped at her chest. This was her worst nightmare come to life. "How did you find me?" "It took some work. It would have been easier if you'd stayed in federal custody." He stepped closer, looking at her calmly, as if they were discussing the weather at a bus stop. "They have themselves a leak." "We thought they might." She touched her stomach, thinking of her baby. How was she going to get away? Her mind went blank. "I had to pull in a lot of favors to find you again. You didn't make it easy." His blue eyes, which she had once loved, were like dark chips in his face now, chilling her. "If you'd just switched cars, I might not have been so lucky. One of the clerks at the bus line wasn't so lucky either." She'd thought her stomach was settled, but at the comment the nausea rose again, filling her chest, her throat, choking her as she puked on the steps. Charles swore, "That's disgusting. I didn't know you were sick." Tosca looked up at him from where she was doubled over on the steps, breathing heavily and desperately wanting something to rinse out her mouth. She braced herself against her lower leg and felt the shift of her gun in her holster at the small of her back, where she dutifully strapped on every morning at Bo's insistence. She had to get to it, but had no idea how she would do it without him shooting her first. And did she have time to waver? She made retching noises and actions like she was going to puke again, while running one hand up her hip. Charles turned his head in disgust, and she lifted the back of her shirt and grabbed her revolver. She pulled and cocked it to advance the bullets in one smooth move. He kept his pistol on her and lifted his eyebrows, apparently unimpressed. "You've gotten gutsy? I could swear you didn't know how to use a gun." "I've learned a lot of things in the past year, Charles." Her voice shook, but her hand was steady as she kept the gun on him. Did she have it in her to kill someone? She thought of her baby, all safe and warm in her womb, and decided she could, if she had to. "So I see. Found yourself a new man. Claim you married him. I suppose you're doing your best to keep him very happy. Trying anyway." He's never complained. But Tosca knew he wouldn't, even if he weren't happy. Maybe he just doesn't know any better. He cautiously advanced up the first step, still 18 or 20 feet away from where Tosca remained near the top. Her heart leaped at even a meager narrowing of the distance between them. "You want to convince me to let you live?" A smile played on his mouth, and interest shot from his eyes. "We both know it wouldn't help, Charles. I'm not going to kneel in front of you and beg for my life." Tosca steeled herself for the inevitable. "Beau taught me how to use this. I'm a pretty good shot." "That's nice. You won't shoot me, though. I know better. You're too weak for that." 2 more casual steps, and he was too close to miss his shot if he fired. "I never should have gone out with you, but you're such a pretty little thing. I let my better judgment be overruled. And I was so desperate for love and attention that I ignored anything that would have made me nervous about being with you. I guess we both got our eyes open, didn't we?" Her mind raced. If she could take 2 steps backward, she would be partly behind the molding and have some cover. She lifted her heel in preparation. "If you weren't so nosy, we wouldn't be in this position." "I wasn't being nosy. I went back for my phone. It was an accident." Her foot slid into place on the step above her. "For both of us." She moved back a couple of steps. His gray eyes narrowed on her, showing none of the affection he'd once displayed. "You're not getting away. You know. I'm going to kill you. And after the work I've gone through to make this happen, I'm going to enjoy it." He lifted the gun a little more to get a better aim at the new angle, his dark eyes promising this was the end. Tosca pulled the trigger on her gun. Her hands shook and she hit his shoulder instead of the center of his chest. He yelled and jerked back, then re-aimed his gun, blood pouring from one shoulder. She pulled again, his shot coming a hairbreadth after hers. She shot again as the heat from the bullet singed her neck, passing too close for comfort. She pulled the trigger twice more, emptying the cylinders, and another time out of reflex. Her whole body shook and tears poured down her cheeks. Tosca opened her eyes and looked at Charles again, lying on the foyer floor, blood pooling around him. She retched again, tears really streaming now, and then stumbled back up the stairs to find her cell phone. She dialed 911 from the bedroom, choking on tears, and could barely speak when a woman answered the phone. 911, what's the address of your emergency?" She coughed a little and tried to think clearly with tears blocking her throat and streaming down her face. 5th Street and Brown Lane." "Which city is this in?" the woman asked. "Crystal Creek. A guy came into my house and threatened me with a gun. I shot him. I think he's dead." She started to retch again because she was crying so hard, but she managed to hold it in somehow. There wasn't anything left in her stomach except bile, but it would still be unpleasant. "Are you safe?" the dispatcher asked, her voice calm and low. "Where are you, ma'am? What's the street address?" "I don't know the number. It's the big brown Victorian in the middle of the block. Peeling paint everywhere. He's renovating. It's Jason McCormick's house." She was babbling now, but she didn't know what to do. She'd been trained to deal with medical emergencies, had handled a fair few at the clinic when people were sicker than they thought, or suddenly stroked out or had a heart attack while they were getting a checkup. This was different. "Stay on the line. The police and ambulance are on their way now. You'll hear the sirens soon. I have to call my husband." "It can wait a minute. Can you tell me what happened?" Tosca grabbed the nightgown she hadn't taken off very long ago from the floor and wiped her mouth with it, then leaned back against the bed, trying to get her thoughts together. "He came after me. We thought we had run far enough, but we hadn't. He came and he was going to shoot me, and I just pulled the trigger, and then he wouldn't stop, so I pulled again and again, and then he was lying there. Bile rose in her stomach as she heard the sirens approaching. I'm going to puke again. She dropped the phone, stumbling back to her feet and across the hall to the bathroom. She made it just in time to retch into the toilet. Someone pounded on the front door. It's the police, ma'am. Let us in. Just a minute. Tosca grabbed a washcloth and wiped her mouth as she headed down the stairs to the front door, stepping around the dripping ick on the carpeted stairs where she had thrown up earlier. Let us in now. Tosca stepped around Charles's lifeless body, trying to keep her eyes averted, afraid every second that he was just pretending, that he would come to life again like they did in the movies and pull her down on top of him or something. Coming. She knew her voice was far too faint for them to hear, but she reached the door and twisted the latches to unlock. Pulling it open, she stumbled back a few steps as two cops came in, guns in hand. They looked at her, then at Charles. Anyone else here? The older, balding one asked. No, just me and him. She dabbed at her lips again, desperately wanting a glass of water to rinse her mouth. You shot him? A younger man, about her own age, asked. Yes, she still could hardly believe she'd done it. Where's your gun, ma'am? His tag read B. Belliston. She had to think for a moment. She couldn't remember. A glance at the stairs proved it wasn't there. Must be up in my room. I went up there to call 911. I don't remember, but I must have set it down. Have you been sick for a while? Do you need to go to the hospital? She shook her head woodenly. It's morning sickness. I thought it was under control. Then he came in, and I lost it. Her mind clung to those irrelevant details, pushing away from what she'd done. Did she smell blood in the air? Or was that her imagination? Have the paramedic come in. She's probably in shock, Officer Belliston said to his partner. Then he led her to a spot in the worn old sofa. Is Jason at work? Yeah, my husband works with him. I need to call them. So you just came downstairs and that guy was here breaking into the house? He probably thought it would be empty. No, she shook her head. He came for me. Her brain must have started clicking into place again because she realized there was someone else she should contact. I need to call John. Is John your husband? He asked. No, he's the U.S. Marshal over my case. I was in witness protection. The cop's eyebrows rose, but he didn't respond as the paramedics interrupted and started strapping a blood pressure cuff on her right arm. She just sat and stared. I can't believe it's over. I can't believe he's out of my life. Not quite, the other cop said, hunched over the body with the other paramedic. The guy's not dead. 12. The paramedic working on Tosca quickly rushed to Charles's side at the declaration that he was still alive. Tosca felt her stomach drop, and tears once again filled her eyes. I'm going to have to run again? This is never going to end. I need my husband. She leaned over, holding her face in one hand. There was no way she would get out of this on her own. She was going to need help. You should call John. John Sandoval. He's based out of the Atlanta office for the U.S. Marshals. He doesn't know where we are, but he knows my case and all about Charles. You said you were in witness protection. Tosca nodded and started at the beginning. My real name is Margot Egan, and 11 months ago I saw Charles kill a man. The paramedics rushed Charles to the hospital and another ambulance came to check on Tosca. Officer Belliston called Beau and told him to come home immediately. Beau and Jason burst through the doors sooner than Tosca had thought possible. Are you okay? They said Charles showed up. Beau touched her shoulders, her arms, her face, as if checking her for injuries. I'm fine. He didn't hurt me. She slid her arms around his waist and pulled him close, pressing her face to his shoulder, grateful when he held her back tightly. She heard the murmur of Jason's voice as he spoke with Officer Belliston and the thumping of Beau's heart under her ear. I was so scared. You did so well, honey. I'm so impressed. I might have killed someone. I can't stop thinking about it. Does it ever go away? His arms tightened around her. No, it never does, but it'll get better. He was a sniper, so he would know. She clung to that as tightly as she clung to him. A few minutes later, Jason moved them to his car and they all went down to the police station to make an official report. By the time they finished, Officer Belliston had gotten word back from John about the case, which would go a long way toward clearing Tosca of charges. Tosca still didn't know if Charles had lived. She waited anxiously for word while grasping Beau's hand tightly in one of the interrogation rooms. Jason waited with them. Tosca was past ready for some food. She hadn't eaten breakfast and lunchtime was long past, but she didn't mention it as she sat snuggled in Beau's arms, her head resting on his shoulder. "Sorry about puking on your stairs," she told Jason. "No problem. We were going to pull the carpet off and refinish them anyway. You just sped up the process." His lips twitched a little as if he was trying to smile, but couldn't quite manage it. She smiled half-heartedly in return. "Is this going to make you miss your deadline?" "No. Thanks to Beau, my team is slightly ahead of schedule, and that's all the contractor will care about right now. Don't worry about our work." Tosca readjusted in Beau's embrace. "I'm glad. We've caused you so much trouble already. I don't want to make it even worse." "So much trouble?" Jason asked. "Beau helped get my team caught up on the job. You have done a ton of work on my house and cooked a bunch of meals, and I'm supposed to think you're trouble?" "He always did go looking for trouble," Beau said to Tosca. Jason smiled a little. "I guess I did a little, but you're welcome at my place any time, Tosca. Please, cause me more trouble like this." She appreciated the reassurance, even if she knew it hadn't been entirely convenient for him to have guests for so long. Her mind turned back to the morning's events, and she sighed. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you, honey." There was real pain in Beau's voice as he murmured into her hair. "I promised I would be. You taught me to take care of myself. I'd say that was pretty important." She wanted to reassure him more, to keep him from blaming himself, but she was still in shock. She knew from experience that he'd blame himself anyway, no matter what she said. "So, if he's no longer a threat, are you going to stay here?" Jason asked. "Because I could still use you on my crew." The thought of leaving made Tosca sad, but Beau responded before she could put her thoughts in order. "Give us a few more hours before we have to make the hard decisions, will you?" Jason smiled. "Sure thing. I'll even give you until tomorrow night." "That's very generous of you," Tosca said. The door opened and Officer Belliston came in again. They got Charles onto the operating table and he coded. They weren't able to revive him. Tosca felt relief and worry. The grief and nightmares would come later. "Now what? Are you going to arrest me? It's pretty clear from the broken side door and your history with him that this was self-defense," Officer Belliston said. "We'll have to go through the motions, but you're allowed to go home tonight." Tosca winced a little when she thought of the bloody entrance to Jason's house. She wasn't ready to face it or the memories yet. "Maybe we'll find a hotel tonight," Beau suggested. "We probably ought to get the place cleaned up before she comes back," Jason agreed. "Yeah, you'll need to find somewhere else for the night," the officer said. "We should be out by tomorrow, but the forensics guys need a little longer before we let you back in anyway." "No problem. My sister likes visitors almost as much as I do," Jason said. "Let's get some food, then we'll get Tosca settled at Maddie's. I have a key." Tosca protested that. "Oh, but I couldn't." "Maddie will be offended if I don't take you there," Jason quelled her refusal. Tosca didn't have the energy to protest further. She'd been to Maddie's place for a few minutes on the day she'd been shopping with Adeline. It was a lovely little house, much smaller than Jason's, but homey and definitely more inviting than a hotel room. Food and a long nap later, Tosca woke on Maddie's sofa to find Beau sitting in a nearby chair. She almost felt human again. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty." "How long have I been asleep?" It was still light outside. "A couple of hours. Feel better?" he asked. She sat up and he came to sit beside her. "Yeah, my brain doesn't feel all fogged anymore." It was a relief because she'd been so numb before the nap. "Tell me Charles is really dead." Beau picked up her hand and held it between his. "He's really dead. And they're not charging me with second-degree manslaughter or something." Beau smiled and slid his arm around her shoulder. "You're not being charged with anything." She nodded and slid against him, tucking her head against his neck. "So now what? You've been running so long you're not sure what to do. I haven't let myself believe I would ever be free of Charles." His picked up one of her hands with his free one. "You have 4 choices, I guess. We can go back to the ranch in Montana. Hal said I could come back to work for him if I wanted, and the position might still be open. We could stay here. You've made friends and I have a good job. We could go back to Juniper Ridge and hope the farm isn't sold yet. If it has, we can find another job there. Or we can go back to Atlanta if you really want. Make something work there. A voice tugged at her to go back to Atlanta, while another urged her to Juniper Ridge. She knew where Beau's heart was, though. She looked him in the face. I want to go home. She waited 2 beats until she saw the disappointment on his face. To Colorado. He brightened. Really? Are you sure? I mean, I'd love it, you know that, but... She covered his mouth with her finger. I love it there, and I love your family. If they haven't sold the farm, I would love to live there with you and raise our baby there. His hand came to cover her stomach as if he might be able to feel the baby already. I love you, Margot Egan. It's Tosca Carver, and I love you too. It took several more days to clear things up with the police, but Friday afternoon, the airplane landed in Denver with Beau and Tosca on it, right on time. Beau had been checking his watch every few minutes, which annoyed Tosca to no end. Carissa was waiting at the baggage claim and rushed to hug her brother. I can't believe you're really back. To stay? She asked. They had spoken on the phone several times since the shooting, but she asked again anyway. Yes, to stay. Beau wrapped her in a tight hug. Thanks for coming to get us. I was starting to wonder if they would let us out of there on time. They cleared us this morning and we were on the next flight home. No problem. We were all freaking out about whether you'd make it or not, too. Hank and Jokel are getting married in 2 hours. Then let's get moving. Beau moved to grab the duffel bags they'd purchased in Montana, and Carissa wrapped Tosca in a hug. I guess I should say welcome to the family, Carissa said. I haven't exactly had a chance to tell you that before. Thanks. I'm really glad to be part of the family. Tosca pulled back and looked at Carissa. Actually, I was worried you wouldn't want me, that you'd be mad at me for taking Beau away when you'd only just gotten him back again. Carissa shook her head. We've missed him a lot, but we missed you too, and wanted you guys to be safe. Jokel especially missed you, I think. She tucked a lock of hair behind Tosca's ear. We're really glad he found you. You make him happy, and now you've brought him back again. Where have you been? You can give us the 3rd degree later, Beau said, joining them again. Let's go. On the way up the mountain, Carissa told them about her pregnancy, a couple of months more advanced than Tosca's, and about everything else that was going on at home. They filled her in on their escape from Charles in Montana and him finding them again in Missouri. Do they know who leaked the information about you? Carissa asked, as they passed a sign that said, Juniper Ridge, 2 miles. John contacted me this morning, Beau said. They arrested one of the field agents in his office late last night. I guess we weren't the only witnesses whose locations were compromised. Most of them weren't so lucky. How awful. Carissa looked a little pale. I'm so glad you got away. We've been so worried about you. Now you don't need to worry anymore. We're safe. Tosca could hardly believe it was true, though she reminded herself of the fact several times each day. They pulled up at the DeCarlo Hotel 20 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. I don't know how Jokel managed to get an opening here on such late notice, but I guess money can accomplish nearly anything. Carissa said, We don't have anything appropriate to wear for a wedding. Tosca finally spoke the worry that had been growing for the past hour and a half. She had tried to find time to do some shopping before they left Kansas City, but it just hadn't happened. Don't worry. We've got you covered, Carissa promised. Sure enough, there was a lovely knee-length red dress with a demure scoop neckline waiting for Tosca when she entered the bathroom to change. It was snug around the middle, but not too tight. She made a quick change and refreshed her makeup, wishing she had colored her hair before coming back. Tosca exited the bathroom in time to see Beau come out of a neighboring room in a tux. It had a matching red cummerbund. She'd never seen him in anything so formal before, and nearly lost her breath at the sight. Now see who looks gorgeous, she said, drawing his attention. He looked over and smiled. Oh, you, all the way. He stepped closer and took her hands. I just realized that in all the craziness this week, I never asked what you want to be called. I know you said Tosca before, but... She put a hand on either side of his bearded cheeks and pressed a soft kiss to his lips. I think I've gotten used to Tosca, and everyone here knows me by that name. I told John to put Tosca on the new paperwork. It's not official yet, but when everything is finalized, I will officially be Tosca Carver. Bo smiled. I love the sound of that. He wound an arm around her waist and pulled her closer for another kiss. Hey, get over here. They're about to start. Carissa motioned them over to the mouth of the hallway. Where should we sit? Tosca asked, hoping for a clear seat in the crowd. You're not sitting anywhere. By declaration of the bride and groom, you two are attendants, thus the clothing that matches the wedding colors. A woman wearing a DeCarlo Hotel polo shirt rushed over with a bouquet and boutonniere. Good, just in time. You're Tosca, she asked, tossing her blonde curls over her shoulder. Yes. Great, I'm Jonquil. This is yours. She thrust the bouquet at Tosca, then turned to Bo. Hold still, and I promise not to poke you with the needle. She attached the flowers and waved to another blonde, this one with much shorter, sleeker hair. They're all yours, Delphi. Thanks. Delphi clipped over in her 4-inch heels. Then we're ready to go. The bride just needs her cue. Will you tell her to come out? Sure. Jonquil moved to the nearby room and stuck her head inside. Tosca stared at Carissa. How did you manage to get our clothes together in time? You only had like 2 days? Delphi is amazing. What more can I say? Carissa turned and smiled brightly. Oh, Jokel, you look fantastic. Tosca turned and saw her soon-to-be sister-in-law for the first time in 5 months, a nearly endless 5 months, and they embraced. Jokel wore a white satin dress with flat ruffles around the snug bodice that came together at a beaded scoop along the left side and then flared out in a long skirt with a princess train. Simple and classy, that was Jokel all the way. Her brown hair was pulled up on the sides and cascaded down the back and over her shoulders in perfect curls. Tosca suspected that the diamonds winking at Jokel's ears and throat were the real deal. I can't believe you're really here, Jokel said, pulling back to look Tosca over. My biggest regret was doing this wedding without you two. She turned and hugged Bo as well. You have no idea how excited Hank was when he found out, after he got over the fact that you didn't call him first. He had to hear it from Marsh? Her eyebrow winged up. I did call him first. Bo's grin was now permanent. He just didn't answer. You look spectacular. So do you. She adjusted the lapels on his suit, though they had been perfectly fine before, then took a deep breath and turned to Delphi. You're a miracle worker. I'm ready. Where are Marsh and my dad? They're coming. They've been talking to your groom, calming him down. Delphi smiled. He seems a little anxious. We ready? Marsh asked as he and another man joined them. I'll cue the music. Delphi stepped into the room where the ceremony would take place. The music changed, and Carissa's son, Paul, disappeared through the doorway, carrying the ring. Bo offered Tosca his arm. She looped hers through it, and on cue, they began the walk down the aisle. 3 hours later, Tosca had kicked off the heels they had provided her to match the dress, and she was dancing in Bo's arms. They'd greeted everyone, given hugs and kisses, and made appropriate excuses for their absence the past months, though they didn't tell the whole truth. No one in town needed to know what had really happened to them. So, you think you can really be happy here forever? Bo asked as he twirled his wife around the floor. I'll have you. What more could I need? The farm hasn't been sold or leased for next year yet. Mom said we could move in right away if you like. He paused and dipped her, looking a little nervous. Unless you want to rent something until we can build a home of our own. Living with Mom might cramp our style. Tosca felt a little delirious with happiness as he lifted her up again. It wouldn't work for everyone, but having your mom across the house sounds perfect to me. His smile showed relief. One thing you should be aware of. What's that? She asked, sliding her arms up around his neck. His voice went low and a little smoky. Twins run in our family. That made her smile even wider. Is that supposed to be a threat? Because it doesn't scare me. That's because you never met Hank and me when we were boys. She wrapped her arms tighter around his neck. And you'll be there to keep them in line. I can't think of anything better. He lowered his mouth to hers and kissed her. Tosca soaked up the security of being in his arms, surrounded by their family and friends. Life looked rosier than ever before. She had found where she belonged.
Thanks for listening to Safe Haven, Book 3 in the Carver Ranch series, and A Love in Juniper Ridge, Sweet Small Town Romance. If you want to know what happens to Piper, Mackenzie, Jason, and the gang, check out my In the Garden series, starting with Hello Again. Please like this story to help others find it, and subscribe to be notified when I post other sweet romance or romantic suspense stories. Hope to see you soon.